like to welcome everyone to the Provo Municipal Council work session for Tuesday, November 19th, 2019. It is 1:04 p.m. in the City Center Conference Room at 351 West Center Street, Provo, Utah. This meeting is being broadcast live on the web on the on the Provo City Council YouTube channel, where it will also be available for on-demand viewing. Please be aware that the microphones in the room pick up the noise of paper and other rustling objects. Further be aware that the microphones can pick up side conversations. And we'll begin with the roll call. Mr. Strachan.
Cliff Strachan.
Brian Jones.
Gary Winterton.
Dave Sewell.
For Bill.
David Harding.
David Buren.
Anna Salza.
David Rogers.
Jake Connect.
George Stewart. Wayne Parker.
Isaac Paxman.
And George.
George Hanley.
Thank you. We will have an opening prayer provided by Jake Stevens.
Our dear, kind, and gracious Heavenly Father, we are very grateful for this beautiful day and for the opportunity we have to meet together and to be able to discuss the matters that we talked about. We ask you please bless us with thy Spirit and that these leaders will be able to make the best possible decisions for this wonderful city of Provo, and we're grateful for this beautiful place in which we live, and we ask these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Although this is a public meeting, only the presenters and those seated at the council table may speak or ask questions, unless otherwise directed by the chair. We'll jump into item number 1, which is a presentation regarding Utah Valley University's Vision 2030 plan. This is budgeted for 25 minutes and will be presented to us by Dr. Steve Anderson, Director of Community and Government Relations, and the Dr. Cameron Martin.
Mr. Chair, I don't believe they're here at the moment.
Aha!
Jeff Miles is item number 2, and he's here.
All right. Let's call an audible and jump to item number 2. Appreciate Mr. Miles, Jeff Miles, who is an audit partner at HBME, for being here ahead of schedule so he can jump in and help us out. This is a presentation regarding the financial audit, and we have it scheduled for 15 minutes.
You wanted to watch the other thing, didn't you?
I thought I was first on the agenda. I must have misread it, but no, it's good to be here with you today. We wanted to give kind of a fill-in on the council on the status of the audit. We have completed our field work, which consists of auditing the financial statements of the city, audit of a single audit, which is auditing federal funds that the city has received, and then also compliance with state compliance that the state auditor's office likes us to look at. And we have no findings to report to the City Council. It's anticipated that we will issue a clean opinion on the city's financial statements when we come to present at the City Council meeting in December. So I think this is year 3 of the city since they've implemented Kayenta Provo 360. So I think the audit process is going really well now. The management's familiar with the software, able to get the reports that we need to kind of expedite the audit process. So in that regard, we're in the process of kind of financial reporting right now. John and David are working hard to get us the kind of the final product that we'll then review and give our opinion on. And so we're kind of in the middle of that, with the goal I think to be done a week from today. And then we will come and report on the final kind of CAFR of the city, I believe at the December 10th council meeting that evening. So with that in mind, though, we're trying to be a little more proactive with this when it comes to this risk assessment. The state auditor's office last year, they went to all 29 counties in the state to kind of evaluate financial reporting and internal controls at the county level to kind of see what's working and not working. And so they put together this document to kind of help all local governments improve their financial reporting and internal controls. And with this, they've kind of formed a matrix where each city can grade themselves and rate if they're a low risk or a high risk type entity based on certain parameters and factors that a city can take into place. And I think a lot of it goes with the relationship between council and management and having proper oversight, and then management also having the resources available to have good internal control. And so I wanted to get this document in your hands because I know the council and management are looking into begin having maybe an internal audit function and to have kind of an audit committee. Those are two items that the state auditor's office highly recommends, especially maybe an entity of this size. Now they've completed their kind of county assessment, I know the cities are going to be right behind that. And if I were the state auditor's office, I'd be looking at the larger cities first within the state. So after they finish Salt Lake City, and then next on that list, you'll start seeing West Valley, Logan, and Provo will be right there. And so I want the city to be kind of ahead of this, so when the state auditor's office says, hey, we're going to come in and look at your city's internal controls, that we can say, hey, we've already done an analysis and we are kind of ahead of the game before the state auditor's office comes in. So if we can scroll down, I don't have the exact page number, but you'll see a matrix with the scoring system eventually. Right here. So here's kind of the fraud risk assessment that they have. So you can see here, if you score over 344 on this matrix, then they consider you a low. And 200 points alone come from the city having adequate segregation of duties. And so the next page after this, I think this is something that John and his team would be able to look at. If you go down one more page, sorry. Not sure who's right there, scroll up. So it kind of has these questions that the city can go through to kind of assess how their segregation of duties are functioning. So then they can then determine, yeah, we have adequate segregation of duties to kind of score those 200 points in the matrix, which goes a long ways to being determined that you're a low risk from a control perspective. So if we go back up to the kind of the matrix, so these are things that they're wanting cities to focus on. Do you have adequate segregation of duties? Are employees and elected officials required to annually commit in writing to abide by a statement of ethical behavior? Does the city have written policies for conflict of interest, procurement, ethical behavior, reporting fraud and abuse, travel, credit purchasing cards, personal use of entity assets, IT, cash receipting? The next one, does the city have a licensed CPA as part of its management team? If not, are members or management have a bachelor's degree in accounting? Have all the board members completed the state auditor online training at least once in the last 4 years? Regardless of license or formal education, does at least one member of the management team receive at least 40 hours of formal training related to accounting, budgeting, and other financial areas? Does the entity have a fraud hotline? And then the last two items, these are items the city's kind of, or we're recommending, because I feel like the city has a lot of these in place already, but does the city have a formal internal audit function, which I know management is looking into having an internal auditor available? And then the last one, does the city have a formal audit committee? And before, the city had a budget committee that was kind of trying to function also as an audit committee, but I feel that those two committees serve very different purposes. Like a budget committee is kind of trying to see where we can trim the fat maybe a little bit and dig into that, where an audit committee, I think the best example I've seen was composed of 2 council members. They had 2 private citizens that were familiar with auditing and accounting, and even better if you can find someone that has governmental accounting experience. And then also 1 member of management that sits in there, and then us as the auditor, we'd be presenting more and meeting more with just your audit committee as opposed to the council as a whole, and that committee can come back and present to the city council. So I feel like the city has a lot of these things in place, and then we can kind of really score well on this by implementing an internal audit function and having a formal audit committee. That I think that kind of goes hand in hand, because then the audit committee can be directing what the internal auditor is looking at. Because I think we need to learn to kind of distinguish between what we're opining on as your independent auditors, which is really just that the financial statements are materially correct, and that's the end of it. It's not, our opinion isn't saying that we're making the best policy decisions, that that the city is well run. That's not what our opinion is. Our opinion is just that what happened during the year has been prepared properly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, where if you get an internal auditor, it can kind of get working on some more kind of ad hoc projects and look at different departments and divisions in a little more detail than what we are able to as part of our financial audit. And that, a lot of that can be driven by what the audit committee is seeing in the city and the feedback they're getting from management. Yes?
Did you happen to say what our score is now?
We haven't gone through this assessment yet. This document just barely came out from the state auditor's office, and so I'm providing it so that council and management can begin kind of figuring out where they stand on that.
And ideally, we want our score to be
Greater than 344 if possible.
344 or above.
Yes, yeah. And like I said, over half of it is just going to the next page and looking at the segregation of duties that the city has, and making sure that we have proper cash handling procedures around cash receipts, cash disbursements, payroll, you know, those kind of items that are happening regularly, and making sure that there's, minimizing the level of risk within those day-to-day processes, and then scoring additional points as these other items are tightened up. I know the city is, Provo's ahead of a lot of cities. We already are using P cards here, where a lot of cities are still using kind of more traditional credit cards. It was 2 years ago that we walked through the P card process that John and Dan Follett have implemented, and I feel like there's a great process going through the credit cards right now. But then this is just a good checklist, and as I read through this, I felt like the city has most of these segregation of duties in place already. That's the benefit of being a larger city, is you have a large enough of an accounting department that you can have people kind of siloed in and not wearing multiple hats. For some of the smaller cities that we audit, it's kind of a one-person shop, kind of doing everything, and then you might have a third-party person kind of reconciling it, making sure it's okay. But I think if Provo were to do this analysis, that they would score fairly well. But to get over the 344, I think you would require to have an internal audit function and an audit committee in place. Any other questions from council? John?
I'd like to make one comment. I think the council will probably remember this, but as part of the 2020 budget, the council did approve, we've set aside some money to bring in an outside entity similar to Provo School District does, where they come in and do an assessment of a specific area, looking at it from an independent view and coming back with recommendations based on our internal controls. One of the reasons it would be helpful for us to have an audit committee sooner rather than later is that committee could help this money that we budgeted for selecting an area. Because what we feel uncomfortable as part of the finance team or management is saying, okay, we want you to look over here. Okay, we've already kind of guided it to a certain direction, which we don't. We want that to be kind of an independent look, and they can come in and just look at an area. So I don't think that's the end game, but it's a good start for us, and we've got the money budgeted, and we want to make sure that's done and assessed before the end of this fiscal year we're in now, because that's where the money was budgeted.
Cliff, did you have a question or comment?
I was thinking that perhaps the question for the council to put to the administration is, what are the plans for reporting back on that fraud assessment, the risk assessment?
The one that I just talked about?
Or just even the matrix, just kind of going through
this one. Are you going to go through this and report back to council, just give them an idea of where you're at?
We would be happy to do that. If you would like the finance team to go through and do an assessment, we'd be more than happy to do that.
I'll send this document to you.
Okay.
We had to copy the document to John and David as well. So I feel like, we've been auditing the city for 10 years now, our firm. We've had different partners on. I'm the third partner to partner the audit here. So we've kind of had our own internal rotation on it. And we feel like Provo City does a good job. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be looking for ways to better and to, we say controls keep honest people honest. We want to put in a structure in place where people can do their jobs to protect city assets, but I also feel like good controls protect the people of the city also, so that if anybody were ever to point a finger, say, hey, no, we've got controls in place. We know that people are playing by the rules, that the money is being properly handled, We have policies in place to protect the city's assets, but also to protect the city's employees. So I think that's really what the state auditor's office is focusing on, is that cities are putting in the proper resources to, to kind of prevent a situation happening where all of a sudden there's fraud going on and everyone's kind of standing like, well, how did this happen? We want to just be in a place where we don't have to worry about that. And I feel that, going through this process is a good place to start to make sure that everything's happening how it should.
So, council, we're kind of at an interesting period of time with just one more council meeting before in terms. There's two parts that I kind of see, two kind of actions. I guess first it would be the audit committee, and it sounds like the administration is supportive of creating an audit committee. Is that? And so I don't imagine we would do that now, but probably in the new years we're looking at committees and whatnot. So maybe hear from the continuing members if we support that, and then any recommendations from the retiring members.
I recommend that Dave Shipley serve on that committee.
That might be a good idea. Excellent. Okay, good thought. Any other thoughts?
I know that as we were on the budget committee and the audit, and the semi-audit committee, I know that we have to be careful about looking at creating policy within that committee. There were times when people would say, I don't want to spend money on this and I don't like this, as they do the audit, and that has to do with the budget process.
Right.
And I just think that we need to make sure that as we get an audit committee, that becomes, that we look at the process, not at the policies that are involved in that.
Okay.
I think that's part of the description, part of the, how you set it up.
Yeah, and I think we've had a good recommendation, a couple council members, a couple community members, and a member of the administration. Perhaps following that model, get us started in the right direction, and also the right mission statement in the beginning, just the right understanding of the scope. I think would be helpful. Do you have any other thoughts as write them up, because it'll probably be a couple of months before we actually do the formation.
One final thought. The way we are currently running our committees, the only voting members are the council members. If it's a council committee.
Yeah, it's a council committee, that's correct. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Work.
Well, another idea that might be a good idea in the interim, I talked about these funds that we've got budgeted to have an outside firm come in and do an assessment. One of the things that we could possibly look at in the interim before we have an official audit committee would be to maybe have council leadership make a recommendation. We could also, if it was helpful, list some ideas, and then there could be an area that's selected from those areas that we've listed. But I think it's good if where we look and assess is something that's determined not by administration, but by an entity that's more independent. I think the council leadership could accommodate that in the interim of getting an audit committee. But I just want to make sure before the end of this fiscal year that we've met the objectives of that fund and that we've done an internal audit with that money for this year.
When I heard you say the end of this fiscal year, I figured that the start of the calendar year might be an okay time. I feel it's more urgent than that.
No, we've got till June 30th.
Right.
So if we get an audit committee in place and they could start functioning by February or March, I think we could still get it done before the fiscal year.
Okay.
If that would work, that would be great.
Okay. If you're comfortable with that.
I am. Well, we're going to have to just move fairly quickly to get there.
Okay.
Question?
Yes, please.
Dave Sewell.
Just a
sorry.
suggestion. Sounds like this is a recommendation that hopefully a lot of cities either have implemented or will implement. So I was wondering if either our finance team or maybe our audit partner has run across or could provide an example of a good purpose or mission statement for this type of committee that has worked well? That would just kind of help us.
My feeling is, and I think our independent auditors are a great source for that. It's really easy for the committee to get outside the scope of what the real intent is and objective is for the audit committee, and I think for the council to make sure that they kind of work at least getting some direction from our independent auditors to make sure that we're not getting outside of the scope's great. I don't feel like management or administration should be, have the independent auditors be a great resource. Do you have any concerns with that, Jeff?
No, I think that, we have the cities where I feel like it's working well, and I could leverage them a little bit and get some kind of preliminary documents that might help you as you're kind of looking to lay that foundation of the system.
That'd be very helpful. Okay, thank you, Mr. Moss. The second thing that I just had down, we talked about using this, a checklist that was created for counties, but and doing just asking the administration to do a self-audit. It sounds like they're willing to do that. Is that something that the council would like to see happen? Or is there any objections to the request that a self-assessment be undertaken? Okay.
I think we could have that ready for, if you'd like, on December 10th. It's not going to be that difficult for us to do, and then we wanted to discuss it as you discussed the annual financial reports.
Okay.
Good.
I think that's wonderful. Let's get that down for the work meeting of the 10th. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Thank you, Mr. Miles. All right. They are excellent. So we will now hear a presentation regarding Utah Valley University's Vision 2030 plan. And we have two presenters, Dr. Steve Anderson, who is the Director of Community and Government Relations, and Dr. Cameron Martin, Vice President of University Relations at Utah Valley University. We welcome them, and there's note that this item is budgeted for 25 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, let's go ahead and pass that out. Is this the clicker?
Yes, it is.
Right is forward, left is back, and that's not a political statement, right? So that was supposed to warm you up a little bit. This is a tough crowd. Wow. Well, thank you. Some of you I know well, coach soccer, and others I've seen in my neighborhoods, and others at debates and various elements. So thank you for allowing us to be here. My name is Cameron Martin, Vice President, University Relations at UVU. I have Stephen White, I have the Steves, right? Stephen White, I was going to say in the red tie, blue shirt, well, that doesn't work either. But Stephen, right here behind Mr. Van Buren, is Associate Vice President, University Relations at UVU. And Steve Anderson, here to my left, is our Director of Community and Government Affairs. He tag teams me with our legislative responsibilities. So thank you for your time. There's two documents that we're sharing with you today. So I guess I'm supposed to stay still. I like to roam a little bit. Oh, this is on wheels, so I can do that. Can I get a copy of each document, please, Steve? So thank you. These are the two documents that I want to just briefly tell you about. First, to the brochure. This brochure about the integrated dual mission of Weber State University, Utah Valley University, and Dixie University. This is a brochure that the three institutions came together because these three institutions are integrated dual mission institutions in the state of Utah. You've heard of the California model of higher education. Yes, thanks, Isaac. Appreciate that. That dominated much of the conversation, if you will, in the higher education ecosystem last century. It is our position that really Utah should lead the conversation for the next century, because this integrated dual mission institutions and what they are doing and how they're doing it. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but there are some important data points in here that show just the distinctive nature of each of these three institutions and how By the way, Wisconsin are taking their community colleges and melding them with their state universities. Florida is growing their 2-year institutions into 4-year experiences as well. Many of the states, because of their limited resources, with an ever-increasing demand on those resources to meet the needs of the people that they serve, are having to do more with less. You've heard that theme before. And the best way to do that is a singular overhead, so you're not having to replicate IT infrastructure or administration or student services, is to have it in a unified way. And it also is beneficial to the student, in which we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing specifically at UVU and how they level up and ladder from one experience to the other. So we wanted you to be aware of this consortium, if you will, between Weber, UVU, and Dixie. And you can see just the cost effectiveness of it all when you compare a dual mission institution, even to a community college or a selective university. Clustering these institutions in like kind, the cost effectiveness of it all is significant and benefit to the state and to the individual. We did, through our no disrespect, by the way, of community colleges and universities, but that model, that California model, there's a lot of students who don't progress onward, and there's a big chasm there where the students fall off. And if you were to look, on average, a student that went to Salt Lake Community College and transferred to the University of Utah, for example, that's an increased cost to them, comparatively so to a dual mission institution, to the student and the state of $14,000 more to complete out. So why I give you this as a background is there is a commission that the legislature launched last year, last session, this Higher Education Strategic Planning Commission, which has been meeting. And as part of that assessment of the higher education ecosystem and governing structure in the state of Utah, one of the issues was Utah County, because of our growth rate. And looking through that historical California model, the assumption was, well, if Utah County is going to look like Salt Lake County, which to some of you, that's fingernails on a chalkboard, I get you, and it is to us a bit as well. Should we then break up UVU to a separate community college and to a university? Well, we don't think that's in the best interest of our student, nor of our community, nor of our limited resources, because of all the data points and what we're trying to do in a distinctive, unique manner at Utah Valley University, as well as at Weber and Dixie. So in response to that, we launched into a planning process that looked at, all right, what are we doing and where do we need to improve our game? What is our plan, if you will, for the next 10 years? That's this document. This is the Vision 2030 plan of UVU. And I just want to share with you just some brief highlights and then field any questions that you may have. But you are a very strategic partner. We have a campus in your city. I'm a resident, by the way, of Provo. So it matters much that we're here. We are starting, today's the first day, we're starting, in fact, right after this, we hit Orem's City Council planning meeting, or working meeting. Starting with the cities that we have a campus in, and then to all the cities within our service region, which include Utah, Wasatch, and Summit counties. And so we'll be on the road quite a bit, but we want you to know that we value you and our relationship with you. We worked harmoniously with our campus at the airport, and it's exciting what's happening there. Congratulations on the new terminal. It was fun. We flew in last night around 1:30 from Kentucky. I don't know if you watched, UVU took on Kentucky yesterday at Rupp Arena, and ESPN sent out a spoiler alert. They sent it out 1 minute too soon because we were only down by 4 points at 3 minutes and 42 seconds. But at 3 minutes, we were only down by 1. And that would have been really exciting on the spoiler alert through ESPN.
And the rest missed a call, are you?
Oh, they missed more than one call, George.
It ended the game, that one call.
It's
over the back.
And it was, in fact, inside story, the cameraman there for UK took a shot and he goes, you're going to want this one. Boom. And he sent it to us. And the guy was completely over the back. So even there, they showed the replays, but whenever there was something against us, they showed replay, and then nothing came up. because it was incriminating evidence. So anyway, it's all right. We were in the game, and we played. It was 5 versus 8, and it was a good day. It was a good time. All right. No, you can't blame the refs. We were there solidly, and it was an exciting time. Please, Dave.
So in 1941, you got your start in Provo, correct?
Correct. Our roots are here.
And when did the main campus leave?
When did we leave? We built the new campus in Orem in 1977, but we still had the footprint where LDS Philanthropy Buildings is there until the 80s, late 80s. And then we sold that to Brigham Young University. By that time, we had started to build out the critical mass in Orem. Great question. We started here. Our roots are deep in Provo. So let me tell you a little bit about where we're going. Please feel free to ask questions, and I'm cognizant of the time, but thank you. So we have a brand new mission statement. President Jimenez, she came and she said, you know, we got to get this down to something you can remember and in one sentence that encapsulates what we are. And this is very strategically stated, an integrated university and community college. Not two separate entities under one roof, but two integrated functions. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that. Educates every student. By the way, you know, to the wordsmith, well, let's eliminate all the unnecessary words. Well, you don't have to say every student, just say students, right? But no, it was necessary because we wanted every student to know that he or she or that they have an opportunity to engage at Utah Valley University. In their work life throughout the experience, excellence in engaged teaching, services, and scholarship. So this is our governing direction. And as part of that, we have some action commitments and core values. At the heart of it all, student success. What are we doing to improve the student experience to prepare them to be a relevant talent in today's working force and tomorrow's? Because we don't even know what tomorrow may yet bring, but we know that they have to be adaptable and ever learning. President Jimenez is helping us to understand, are we giving exceptional care, accountability, and results? Caring for the one, caring for the many, caring for the community, as well as being accountable to what we are doing or aren't doing and yet need to do, which is what this plan is. This plan isn't a report on what we're doing. This plan is a report on what we're doing and what we need yet to do more of to better fulfill our mission, so that there is no doubt that extrapolating, that's the wrong word, pulling out, how about that? Thank you. The community college from the university is not the right move for our community because that would increase our costs exponentially. Now, there's another big word for you. I got that one right. Thanks, Isaac. Thanks for laughing. That makes me, I like to have some laughter a little bit here. All right. So you saw this in that other brochure. These are the institutions in the Utah system of higher education. These are the 3 institutions that are the integrated dual mission universities and community colleges. So we're obviously UVU, and these are the workhorses of the system. 50% of all Utahns that are enrolled in higher education are within these 3 institutions. We are the teaching workhorses of the state, within the state system, and we're not including Brigham Young University in this. I know I have 3 degrees of glory from BYU. We love BYU. Blue and green go well together. We'll just leave it there. But this is within the state infrastructure. The integrated dual mission institutions are serving rapidly expanding regional workforces. So if you go to the growth sectors of the counties of Utah, number 1 is Utah County, UVU. Number 2 is Washington County, Delaware-Dixie, and then comes in the Ogden area. So we are the growth sectors in fulfilling and meeting those needs. And here, 47% of all associate degrees are being produced through these 3 institutions, and nearly 39% of baccalaureate degrees. So these are workhorse institutions that are doing our best to fulfill our goal and mission. So earlier I said UVU is not a separate community college and a separate university, but an integrated one. That's what this chart is talking about. Because a lot of people will say, well, you're too expensive on the community college front. Well, I'd like to challenge them, finish the sentence. Like, what? We may be more expensive, but not by much, for tuition on a community college front, but we're far less expensive at the baccalaureate, at the university front. So finish the sentence, right? Don't hold us accountable. And that's one of the things that the legislature and this commission is saying, oh, you're too expensive. Well, wait, time out. There's another part of that story, finish the sentence. So the integratedness is you have students who are wanting a university experience and are able to just get into a 2-year mechatronics degree, which Micron, by the way, will start you off between $60,000 and $70,000 a year with a 2-year degree. They need that labor. They need that talent. And so we're doing what we can to produce that talent to meet that, respond to that need. So please understand, it's an integrated experience. It's not one to the other. And the students, by the way, are coming. So if we're not doing something right, then why would they come either? So just keep that in your mind. Now, at the same time, here's who our students are. 36% of our students are first generation. I think that's fantastic. As you know, as you go out and walk the streets of the city, there are a lot of the junior high of when I would have been in junior high is not the equivalent to, it's a lot of very growing populations, various populations in our community. And so some of those populations tend to self-select themselves out of higher education. We're proactively engaging them, trying to show them how they can. And it's not that everybody has to have a doctorate degree, they don't, but there's an importance, and we'll show you about leveling up stackable degrees and credentials to be relevant in today's workforce. 32% are 25 and older or part-time. So we're a very a commuter school, if you will. 40% are married or in a partnership. 17 are support at least one child. 80% are employed. So the students we're working and putting themselves through. 27% are working more than part-time. That's full-time hours. 19% of student of color and growing. So now into the specifics of the 2030 plan. I'm just going as quickly as I can, so as you field any questions, be courteous of your time. How are we going to fulfill our mission? How are we going to help magnify our model in a way that meets the needs of the local community? Strategy number 1, and on page 3 in this booklet there is an executive summary, and so the strategies that I'll be touching upon are right here on page 3, and then on the column it shows you the pages in the report that specifically deal with each of these items and issues. So first one, enhance the student succeed and accelerate completion of meaningful credentials. There are things that we are doing, that we have internal roadblocks or hiccups that we're identifying to resolve. We're also doing what we can to see how technology can improve not only the business administration of the institution, but also the learning experience, the pedagogical approach of our classes and degrees. So we have a completion plan 2.0 that we have now just relaunched. We started with structured enrollment. You may or may not have heard that. It was a way of saying, okay, where are you as a student? Are you prepared for college level experience? And if not, then we'll narrow your choices so that we increase your probability of success until you get to that level, and then broaden their opportunity to take the classes. It's that type of thing. What are we doing? We've launched a first-year experience, a center for first-year student success, so that students can come in and get the support and need that they require to be successful. So we're trying to remove the barriers, support a completion through. And what does completion look like? So the students of today, when I was younger and had hair, some of us can relate around that picture. Again, I'm not even gonna laugh out of Isaac. All right, thank you, Isaac. Right. We went to school and then we got a job.
You thought you were being serious.
Yes. Thanks, George. Thank you. You're making me feel more at home now by picking on me a little bit. I like this. We went to school and then we get a job. The students today, they want to work and then school. And so that's a different mindset. So what are we doing to support them to complete? And complete at the various levels appropriate to the level of job opportunity that they're pursuing and trying to secure. Enhance the educational quality through recruitment and retention of excellent and engaging faculty and engaging excellent faculty and staff. We want to recruit the best, but we want to recruit the faculty, for example, that want to be at a teaching institution. If you're coming with a research agenda and you want to have your own experience separate of the student engagement, we're not a fit for you. some people, this is how I like to best describe the differences between a teaching mission versus a research institute mission. So the University of Utah is doing some ground-cutting, great work on genetics, and specific, say, on Alzheimer's, or not Alzheimer's, excuse me, autism, right? What is going on genetically? We need to know that. UVU will not delve into those petri dishes. But where we will, the waters we will swim in are on how to respond to autism. So we have our Cole Nelson building and our Nelson Center for Autism, and we will lead. We want to lead the country in how do you respond? How do you teach the first responder? How do you teach the teacher, the parents, or the person with autism? How do we respond to it? Now, the one informs the other, and vice versa. So that's the difference, if you will, between our missions. So I talked about this earlier about the stackable degrees. This is very important for us. So a student, any video gamers around the table? All right, wow, this is great. So you know if you get to level 5 and you fall off the path, what happens? You go back to the beginning? You just know, you go back to the level you've already mastered, correct? Right? You don't go all the way back. That same type of mindset is what our students have. So I want to work. What do I need to work? I need a credential. I need a certificate. Great. Then that's year 1. Year 2, I can have an associate's degree. Year 3 is the gap. We're trying to figure out what is a 3rd year certificate that we could do to fill that so that they get to year 4 and so on. So as they go into the workforce and they're doing great things, like for example, one student I'm thinking of in particular working at Micron, it's like, I'm great with my 2-year degree, but maybe down the road I'll come back. Well, we don't want to hold that person in harm's way by saying, well, now you've got to go all the way back and start over. No, he has that associate degree. That's a new level. And so when he comes back and goes to get that added credentialing to pursue a job advancement, he doesn't have to start all over again. And making sure that there's a clear pathway and communicating that. And allowing students to transfer, because they're very fluid. They tend to follow this thing called the love bug. And wherever they go, we want to be able to, thank you for smiling, I appreciate that. Thank you. So we want to make sure that we're not harming them getting across the finish line and completion. So in the priorities on strategy 2 now, to improve the accessibility, flexibility, and affordability of current and future students. We've had 3 years where we cut student fees. And that was also because the legislature actually invested in us to close the funding equity gaps. But we want to build a coordinated multiple campus, and I'll show you a map here on this next slide and how important it is, and you're on that map. Flexible education online offerings, so courses that are in high demand and I'm working, I can't get I can't physically get to campus, can I take it online? Yes, and so to build out the ever-increasing opportunities to leverage the online experience. But I have to tell you, I don't want my children getting all their degrees, because they're 22, twins, girls. I don't want them going to school in the basement of our house on a computer. I want them to socially connect with others. But yet there might be a professional person who's working, who's had that social experience, has learned those lessons, just needs to get across the finish line, and an online experience is better for her in that regard. Does that make sense? So we're trying to build out those opportunities and make sure that it's always affordable. And because that is a big barrier. So this slide shows you the various campuses that we have, right? We go from Lehigh. We're in the process of purchasing the building that used to be Zango, then Entrada, and now hopefully will be ours. We're leasing space in that building now. Entrada built their new one on the other side of the freeway. And so we want to procure that. We also have 10 acres up there in Thanksgiving Point, just on the other side of the hi, come on in, of the front runner stop. All the way down to Payson, we have 30 acres in escrow. All of these campuses, except for the Orem Culinary Arts, are along a front runner spine to use and leverage mass transit to move people around. You've heard that our head count at UVU is 41,728. Well, we can't fit all of those bodies onto one footprint, nor are they coming. So 22% or 12% of that group is concurrent enrollment. And so that we have to have a strategy that we're launching to improve our ability to service standalone programs like we have here at the Provo Airport with our aviation emergency services. If you're doing your undergrad experience, you'll go to the Orem or have some things online, but if you're going to the specific program, you'll go to that destination, that satellite campus. Leveraging that, again, all along the front runner spot and spine. Eventually, that does go down to Payson, which is why we're looking at that land there.
There's a couple dots on that last slide between the airport and the planned Payson station that's not.
Yes, we have some high schools that we offer some coursework at.
Okay, thank you.
And by the way, I don't know if you know this, we're one of 6 institutions. Is it 6? 9. Let's just flip flop. That have a campus in federal land. So if you want to go to one of the true dark spots on the world in the country and look through a microscope and see further, or telescope, excuse me, see further into space. Thanks, Steve, for laughing at that one. That one was not intentional. Then, because you don't have any noise pollution or anything, you see further. It's beautiful. And it has overnight capabilities. If you want a Provo City Council retreat, go down to Capitol Reef, do some stargazing and planning for your future. All right, I need to move on. Strategy number 3, strengthen our partnerships with our community members and workforce and economic development. These are the priorities. We have a very proactive K-12 alliance, or K-16 alliance. In fact, it's the model for the rest of the state to look to and what we're doing with our superintendents in our high schools and with MTech and UVU here in the Valley. And improve our industry partnerships so that we're responsive to the needs of workforce and going on. So anyway, these are the things that we're trying to do. Here's the K-16 Alliance and the various school districts that we work with. Provo, obviously, as near and dear to you, and we're in Provo. And leveraging concurrent enrollment better. Students can graduate with their associate's degree and their 2-year degree if you plan it out well. And we're trying to message that to parents, and that saves a lot of money to the student who's pursuing his or her future endeavors. Then here, improving our partnership, with CTE. There's a lot of demand for the 2-year in the certificate, that middle skill in the workplace. And the baccalaureate tends to overshadow the 2-year experience. And we're trying to elevate that opportunity. Ask yourself, to your children, would you let your children be done with a 2-year degree? There are some parents who are like, no, they got to go on. Well, there are some jobs out there that will pay, double what a 4-year degree may yield in one discipline compared to a 2-year degree, say in plumbing or something of that nature. So there's a lot of experiences out there for all persons, and our goal is to let them find their passion, to find that calling, and to pursue it accordingly. So our strategies align with our core principles of achieve, to include, and engage, all at the heart of student success. And that is the presentation that I have, we've come to share with you, and I want to say thank you to what you do. This is a living, breathing document. There's a website, if you go to uvu.edu/vision2030, and it comes up into that website. We'll keep that updated. A printed report is stagnant, but it's step 1 as we continue to mature in what we're doing and how we're doing it to respond to the needs of our community. Do you have any questions? Please, David.
Yeah. So how many, you may not know this, but how many teachers, professors have real work experience in the fields they're teaching in?
It depends upon the department. So, for example, say the Woodbury School of Business. By the way, we just did our groundbreaking for our new Keller building. Keller will house the Woodbury School of Business. They have professional positions and track positions, and then tenured track. And they want to have a natural balance between that, because that adds to the learning experience of the student. And so it's really, do you know, Stephen, in the School of Business, I think in one department they may have 2 professional tracks and 6 or 7 tenure track, and then in another department within the Woodbury School of Business, say finance, they'll have a similar type of ratio. So I wouldn't be able to tell you that specifically, but if you have a question, I would happy to research out for you.
Well, that's fine.
46% of our faculty are full-time tenure on a tenure type of full-time experience. 54%, did I do the math right? 46 and 54% are adjunct, which our ideal ratio is more fit in that realm of 55 or a 50-50 kind of a thing. So the adjunct, we can ebb and flow based upon demand, but you still have that grounding of full-time faculty.
Thank you. We're running a little behind. Is there a burning question? If not, thank you, Dr. Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will you let us know what we can do to be better partners with Provo City? We appreciate your time and thank you for what you do. As a citizen of your community, I thank you for what you do and for how you're doing it. I appreciate it. It's a great city, great leadership. And let us know how we can help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is a discussion regarding updates to the wastewater impact fee facility plan. This is presented by Mr. John Borgett, Director of Administrative Services, and is budgeted for 15 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Harding and Council. Just mentioned that we also have Dave Decker, Rebecca Andrus, Jim McKnight, and Gary Calder here, and if we get down to we want to dive any deeper into some questions, we may have them come up and be able to respond as well. But as you're aware, last year and basically July 1st of this fiscal year, we adopted some new impact fees. The council approved them in the spring, and they went into effect in July. But there's been some changes that have occurred since then, specifically with the 10-year project plan. And as you know, there's a lot of different moving parts of the city, and just a lot's happening. And there are 3 specific areas that have impacted that project plan that we felt like warranted a change. We are not proposing as an administration to increase or change impact fees. We just did that in July. But we would like to update and have the council by resolution approve these changes to the to both documents that represent the project plan, the IFFP and also the IFA. The 3 areas that were impacted, specifically the Rocky Mountain Medical School, as they come in on the west side of the golf course, there's some infrastructure that's going to need to be put in for to help accommodate their needs, as well as the mix project. And then initially, when we did the 10-year plan, we had assumed, and kind of the general plan was thinking that we were going to put the new treatment plant on the west side. And after a lot of debate and a lot of discussions with the council, with Public Works and Administration, the decision was made to put that, to actually put it adjacent to where our current treatment plant is, which also had some impacts on our wastewater infrastructure. And so I just kind of want to show a couple of slides. The original project plan, it's just if we could just pull that up, it's a PDF. And just kind of scroll down, and these are the projects it listed, and it totaled just under $76 million. Okay, and they're listed here. And then I've got the amended. If you want to go ahead and close that, I'm just going to pull up the amended, and I've made some notes on changes. Okay. These items that are highlighted are new, okay? And as far as these specific projects, if you want to dive down a little deeper, you can talk to Dave Decker or Rebecca Andrus, they can respond. But 600 West, that is related to the mix project, and it's going to provide some additional capacity from a wastewater perspective for the mix. East Bay Boulevard, That 18-inch line is related to the medical school. And then if we scroll down, and once again, these items that are highlighted are the ones that changed. The next 4 are all related in changes with the wastewater treatment plant going on the existing site rather than on the west side. And the big one, and really the most significant change of all the things we're talking about, is this parallel 36-inch trunk line that's needed with the change that's made. And that's $8 million. So it went from approximately $76 million to $87.7 million. So we're up about $10 million, but this more accurately reflects what we want to shoot for and what we want to update the master plan for and have included in our plans. The other reason that we're recommending that we do this, as we work with the mix and also with Rocky Mountain, they are going to be providing some of this needed infrastructure that we're talking about, and we're working with them. Haven't got agreements yet, but want to work with them so that if they provide that infrastructure, we could provide them some impact fee credits. And so it would be the same as whether we're paying for it and they're paying impact fees, or they're paying for it and we're giving them credits. But it's a net zero to the city, but the really city benefits from that kind of a relationship. And so with that, I am happy to answer any questions, and if there are questions that I can't answer, we'll have Dave and his team respond.
You mentioned Rocky Mountain in the mix. We're working with them. Why are we choosing to work with Rocky Mountain rather than our own power? Is it
Rocky Mountain University.
Rocky University.
Oh, I thought you were talking about power.
Sorry, I'm referring to medical school,
Oh,
university. Okay, yes.
So, if I heard you correctly, the proposal is to update the plan, but there's no request to change the fee structure, the impact fee rates and all
That's
that.
correct.
We're moving from 76 million to 88, $12 million difference. Will we be able to pay for that without adjusting rates, or is that just kind of, are we underfunding? How are we handling that additional $12 million? How's that going to be paid for?
Well, the portion that's related to the 2 projects, Rocky Mountain University and the mix, that will be handled through what I talked about, the impact fee credits and whatnot. They're going to provide the infrastructure, and that would come through impact fee. So that portion will be funded. The actual treatment plant and the infrastructure related to the treatment plant, I would think that we've talked all along about basically funding the treatment plant in 2 ways. Okay, one was through the money that we got through the state, and the other was on a pay-as-you-go basis, and so those costs would be incurred through the rates. Would you agree with that, Dave?
Sean, just one clarification. The treatment plant itself is the last 2 projects identified there, and they have been included, and only a portion of the treatment plant obviously can be attributed to development, and so that's why you see less than the total cost for the treatment plant. But the treatment plant has been included, but there were some facilities leading to the treatment plant that had not been missed, and that's what's been added.
Okay.
And these portions in this column are, I think, are the portions that are attributable to growth on that.
I think the only thing I'd mention, John alluded to it quickly, but when we did the impact fee studies and brought these to the council the first part of this year, implemented in July, we indicated that rather than doing all the impact fees in bulk, we would do 1/3 of them every 2 years. And because the wastewater capital facilities plan is among the oldest of those facilities on which we base the impact fees, we'd like to update that master plan and bring it in the first round of those every 2-year analyses. So this is a little bit of a stopgap. It's to get us through, the next couple of years, but we will be back within a year or so, maybe 18 months, with a new wastewater impact fee study, and we'll incorporate these as well as any other changes that are forecasted in the master plan. So again, rather than changing the impact fees again a year later and then again in 18 months, Given that this is, kind of an interim step, we didn't think it made sense to update the impact fees. We'll be updating them at the end of the new master plan anyway. So that's kind of our thinking behind that.
All that was helpful. Let me try restating my question, and I don't think I asked it very well. My understanding is with the impact fee study, I wasn't part of that committee, but basically we looked at all of the infrastructure that was on our horizon that we were going to be building, all of the new development that we were expecting, the amount that this new infrastructure had to be done because of this new development, and then kind of dividing, so this is how much, and then kind of dividing it across that development, and then that's how you arrive to your fees. I guess my concern is we went from 76 to 88, so this is now a bigger pie in a way. We have $12 million more, and so I just wanted to make sure, but we're not changing this. So is it just that we expect in 12 months that's when we'll adjust it, and then
That is the plan.
That makes me more sense.
It does, and you're bringing up key points, and we actually had our consultants, they did go through and do some calculations based on these changes, what the change would be to the impact fee. And because these costs have gone up very significantly, it does impact them. And I think what Wayne's saying is that we likely will expect another increase when we look at it again. But right now, we are at $2,371 roughly for the impact fee. And with these changes, it would actually go to $3,300. So pretty significant. But first of all, we're never required to charge the full amount. We have the legal ability to do that, but we're not required to. And based on the fact that we just implemented impact fees on July 1st, we want to look at this another 18 months and address it.
It's just curious to me that we do a project like impact fees, and we put it in place July 1st. We're 5 months later and already changing it. So they did those studies too. But
Well, they're based on assumptions.
the Rocky Mountain Medical School was approved in January. We did our study, we did that fees on July, and now we're coming back and saying, oh, we need, I don't get it, but.
We were just looking at this. The actual report of the impact fee study was dated October 25th, 2018. So some of the research may have been happening in months preceding that. But the council adopted the impact fee changes as part of the budget. That then went into effect on the 1st.
And the other thing I would say is, when we got looking closer at what was going to be needed for these facilities, specifically the mix and the medical school.
John, don't say that. I think we looked really close at the Rocky Mountain Medical School. What was going to be needed.
I think we did, but
now you're saying we look closer and find we're going to have to help a little bit more.
Well, I don't think we're helping them more. We're just talking about what's going to be needed in wastewater infrastructure to provide their uses. And I don't know if you agree with that or not, Dave.
Well, I can add a little bit of perspective. So the master plan that was done for wastewater is actually dated, it was adopted by the council in 2013. That's how old the master plan is. And when the master plan was looking at zoning and densities, the mix and the medical school weren't even in play in 2013. There was no conversation happening about densifying the area. And so there's been a number of projects, there's been a number of changes in those projects as they've moved forward. With the medical school specifically, we had identified when they first came in, we told them that we would not have capacity in the existing line in Industrial Parkway, so they knew right off the bat. They specifically made a request when we told them the line size that they would have to upgrade. They specifically made a request to be included in the impact fee study. So that was done after all the IFFP and everything was developed. And we said that we're willing to do that, but the line has to be sized for other development besides just the medical school. And so other areas that are down in that part, in the south central part of the city that could potentially get into that sewer line, we've sized the line appropriately for that. And that's really the only reason that should be included in the impact fee study. I don't know if that helps.
Okay, can I add something in with Dave talking about the 2013 plan? I think he said a pretty important thing, is that they looked at the land use in the general plan that we had at the time to help guide what they were doing with that plan. And historically, we've kind of not had a realistic general plan of where we think the growth is. Previous councils have used the general plan more as a control document rather than really going in and predicting and projecting future growth. And I think in the future, that's a part of, maybe a smaller part of, accurately forecasting the needs for growth and future impacts that systemic improvements will have on the city. Is that when we do our general plans, we look at it realistically for what we really project growth to be.
So this is, we're going to be looking at this later tonight and asked to...
I think it's actually scheduled for the 10th of December.
Okay. Mr. Jones.
So one related item, we had a discussion this morning with Dave and Rebecca and others. So this is related to the sewer connection, the West Side Sewer Connection Ordinance, which you will be hearing tonight, which is a first hearing from the Planning Commission. The current draft of that ordinance has a sunset provision that references a number of projects in the previously adopted IFFP. It probably needs to actually reference these ones, which won't be adopted until December 10th. So having talked about that with Dave and others this morning, I believe it's our recommendation that you actually continue the West Side Sewer Connection Ordinance tonight so that it can be adopted at the same time as the new IFFP and reference the project numbers in the new IFFP. Any questions about that?
Just real quick while you're there,
Could you refresh our memories on the different impact fees we have currently that we charge developers?
Okay, and I'll look for help too, but I think I know them. Okay, we have a water impact fee. Okay, we have a wastewater impact fee or a sewer impact fee. We have a energy impact fee. We have a storm drain impact fee. We have a police and fire impact fee that we're newly implemented this year, and we also have a parks impact fee. What's that?
Traffic, transportation.
Transportation, yes. Sorry, I knew I would probably miss one, so sorry about that.
so I count 7.
Okay.
Wow.
And those are all independently statutorily authorized. There's nothing in our list that runs contrary to the options provided by state law.
The other thing I would mention, we have utilized our consultants to provide help and assistance and counsel to make sure that we're still, as we're updating these plans, that we're following the state guidelines and rules, and they've been involved with that too. So, like that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan. Item 4 is a presentation regarding the Utah Valley Hospital expansion project. This will be presented to us by Mr. Kyle Hansen, Administrator of the Utah Valley Hospital. And it's budgeted for minutes. Where should I stand? At the front? Oh, that would be great. Thank you.
There's also a remote, so you can shift between the slides. Just
Okay.
with this little monitor back here.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to come spend a few minutes with you today. I'm sure you've got plenty of items on your agenda, and this was really an opportunity for me to introduce myself as well. I'm new in this role as the CEO at Utah Valley Hospital and have been here for about 6 or 7 months. I've worked with Intermountain Healthcare for about 9 years in different parts of the state, and I'm excited to be down here. So I wanted to give you some updates on our project, which is getting closer to the final end here. Our employees, our caregivers, physicians have really been through quite a lot with this project over the last 5 years, and the amount of moves and noise and just disruptions to trying to do what we do every day in terms of taking care of our of our patients while major construction is going on. So maybe just as a quick reminder of kind of how things have laid out. We've been working on this since the summer of 2015. We expect to be finished by next summer. The majority of the project's actually been completed in terms of the new buildings that have been built. Obviously, you're aware of the Peterson Tower there, 12-story tower that we built, and then the Sorensen Legacy Tower here, which is a 9-story tower. We did elect to keep what we refer to as this west building, which is our women's and children's building. Really kind of connects those two new buildings to the rest of the campus. Some of the other kind of key points in terms of the project, sizable investment in the community, obviously, over $400 million investment in this project. Increased our square footage by about 50%, and the campus itself went from about 34 acres to almost 50 acres. Nearly doubled the ER capacity in our emergency room and added some additional new services, including some added beds as the community continues to grow. And then we also included a Live Well Center, which we do a lot of teaching of community education, health classes, and other things for the community in that location. These are some more recent pictures. This one on the left was taken this week. So we brought down the old hospital, basically. It looked like Sarajevo at different points over the last 12 months as the construction crews brought that down, and most of that impactful work is now done. You can see there some finished work that they need to do on some of the existing buildings that were connected and impacted, and then the site work here for the center of the campus on the east side is kind of some of the heavy lifting that we have left to do to finish the project. We will be adding this bridge across 500 West. Right now that's slated for April of 2020, so it will be nice not to watch some of our physicians play Frogger as they cross the street in the morning and at night in a very unsafe way. So we're excited to get this part done. This is a rendering of what the campus will look like on the east side, with a great kind of healing space with a pond and a garden that will open up from a seating area that's outdoor and immediately accessible from our cafeteria. We're also going to have some walking paths that will kind of intersect around here and throughout the campus that will be nice for those that are on our campus as well. And then we will have sort of a connection in terms of a covered walkway to the existing physician plaza that's on the campus also. One last note, we found out just last week, I guess, that our project here was selected by the Utah Construction and Design as their project of the year, their construction project of the year in the state of Utah. So kudos to our architects and contractor with Jacobson. They've done a pretty nice job with our new hospital. Any questions on any of the facilities stuff that I can answer quickly? Yeah.
Yeah, if you go back to the very first slide. So looking to the east of what you're doing, what do you consider the future of Foxfield and the school district offices to be?
Well, I think we'd like to have some conversations with the school district, or continue to have conversations with the school district about that property. We do have interest in it, even though we don't formally have plans related to how we would use it. I think just in terms of the growth, obviously we, in addition, have some of the lots up here that are currently sort of still being used for staging of construction and whatnot, that are also some future expansion paths for us, but no formal, defined plans, but I think we are definitely interested in conversations with the school district about that property. So, it's interesting, even 5 years later from when we started building this project, I don't know if we would have built the same project if we were to have started this today. So much of what we're doing within Intermountain Healthcare is to move things out of the hospital, find ways to do things in a more affordable setting appropriately. We have a lot of insurance companies that say to us constantly, why do you do any outpatient surgeries in a hospital? It's just more expensive to do it there. So, as we add incremental services, I think you'll see a focus on growth in outpatient settings that don't necessarily have to be in the hospital. But we very much know and built this hospital to be the trauma hospital for this county going forward into the future. And so the acuity of the services we provide here will continue to increase as the population grows.
How are you working with the city on that infrastructure? If that's going to be the center for that type of medical, what are we doing? How are we working together? What's going on?
Well, I think there's probably plenty of work to be done still. As we better refine what those strategies look like and where that incremental growth will occur. It's not just unique, I think, to this campus. We're looking at the entire county where the growth's occurring, and Intermountain has land in other parts of the county as well, where we're, the goal really is to keep people as close to home as possible for the care they receive. Sometimes it's a lot harder to come to a big campus and navigate everything. If it's a service you can receive with the same level of quality closer to home, we'd like to try and do that as well.
And I do very much appreciate that. I've been very, very impressed with the way that you have not involved the city in acquiring land. You've done this all on your own. And I think that that's been a really kudos to you for doing that, not coming to the city and saying, we need you to do eminent domain, or we need you to do this or this or this to make this happen. I appreciate the efforts that you have done on your own to make this beautiful campus.
Yeah, I'll pass it along to my predecessors who did most of the work. But yeah, it was quite an effort. I think we're very interested in what happens with 800. Over time as more of a direct access, maybe to that would be certainly closer to us. But great feedback. Yeah.
A couple questions. Show us visually where is that Sky Bridge going? What building is it connecting to?
So it'll come across the street here on this side, right in front of the Revere building, and it will connect right into our building of what's this Women's and Children's building on the second floor, and then you'll be able to kind of go up and down to the bridge as well.
Second question is, now with the change of the emergency room way down to the south,
yes,
your air ambulance stuff is quite a ways removed. Is there plans to put it on the roof or move it to a different parking lot?
So it's actually, I don't know if I have a good picture of where it sits. It's actually fairly proximal to our EMS entrance to the ER. We have a direct sidewalk right here from where the helipad is. We feel like that's
okay. So the old one is
the old one's moved. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're. I think the biggest challenge we've had is directionally trying to, people that are used to coming to the old ER with signage and things are still coming along 300, and our direction sort of to get them to the emergency room off of 300, there's some enhancements we're going to do with signage and trying to make that a little bit more obvious to navigate. So, good question. So one of the things that we like to obviously talk about is, well, we have this beautiful facility. People really remember the care they receive based on the personal interactions they have with, one of our caregivers. So whenever I get the opportunity, I like to really show some of the results of our caregivers in terms of the quality of care that we provide. These are just a number of the sort of the national recognitions that Utah Valley Hospital has been recognized for. Maybe I'll just point out a few really quick. This CMS Medicare 5-star rating system is a rating system all hospitals are rated on nationally, over 4,500 hospitals. Only about 6% of the hospitals nationally get a 5-star rating. It's based on 60 different quality and experience and cost metrics. Utah Valley Hospital is one of those hospitals. We're also a leapfrog A-graded hospital in terms of patient safety. U.S. News and World Report ranked us as the #2 hospital in Utah, behind the University of Utah, so we still have some work to do there, but we're still in a pretty good spot. So just, we have excellent people, and they're the reason that we have some of these really recognized national performance. Also, just wanted to briefly share some information with you. You know, each year we meet with the county council members and present to them the gift to the community and our community benefit and charity care. I'm sure you're aware, but just maybe as a reminder, I love working for Intermountain Healthcare because of this mission and the balance that we have as a not-for-profit to really provide to those that don't have the ability to pay. So we recently changed this. We adjusted the charity care guidelines up to 200% of the federal poverty level. So if you meet that and you don't really have much in terms of savings, just about all of your services you can get for a $50 copay. There are circumstances where that fee can even be waived. And then from there, it's a sliding scale that determines your obligation to pay up to 500%, which based on family size could go up to almost $200,000 in income. And what I try to do is educate people in our community about this. Over half of the charity care we gave away last year was people that have insurance, right? So we know with high deductible plans, there are a lot of people that are effectively not ever using their insurance because they don't reach that deductible. In fact, while Utah has one of the lowest costs per person in terms of health care, we're a young, healthy state, we have one of the highest rates of out-of-pocket spend per person on health care because of the penetration of high deductible health plans in our state. So we've seen that increase in terms of the number of individuals with insurance that are accessing our charity care. And these are some of the numbers. These are unique to the 3 hospitals in Utah County, Orem, Community, and American Fork. The bulk of this, though, does exist at our hospital just based on volume. So roughly 31,000 individuals that received charity care in 2018. And that equated to about $36 million in charity care that was provided. Additionally, we report as part of sort of community benefit and gift to the community some additional items. The largest piece of this really is what's the underfunding of Medicare and Medicaid programs in terms of reimbursement that we receive. That's part of the reporting requirements, so it's included in the gift to the community. And I think importantly, it doesn't include any bad debt. So anytime somebody has the ability to pay us and then just chooses not to and we don't collect, that is never counted as part of charity care and what we do. I think for Intermountain, the number in 2018 was about $26 million in charity care. And anyway, it's something we're obviously very proud to be able to provide. Yes?
So often with people that provide this type of charity care, we get a report on how many are Provo residents. And Provo has a high degree of residents that are kind of struggling.
Right.
So do you see a high percentage that are from Provo?
That's a great question. I don't have that data off the top of my head in terms of zip code origin and where folks are coming from. I would, like you, assume that a larger proportion is likely Provo zip codes as well, but that's certainly a number we can run and provide back to you guys if you're interested in knowing exactly how much of that comes from city residents. Okay. Yes, sir.
So community benefit is, for example, Medicaid or Medicare reimburses you a certain amount. The amount they reimburse you to the difference in what you would normally charge for that service?
What we would normally be reimbursed by a commercial health plan.
By a health plan, not
average.
Not your book rate.
No, not my book rate. No, nobody pays the book rate. That would take a lot longer to get into and explain. So, yeah. Any other questions on that? I'll keep moving here. So, one of the things that we do on a triennial, every 3-year basis is develop a community health needs assessment with input from many of our community partners here to try and identify what are the most pressing community health needs. This current year that we're in, 2019, we've been going through the cycle of meeting with many in the community to identify what should those health priorities be for the next 3 years as we work on strategies and initiatives to address that. We've been doing a number of screenings. Every year we do screenings. These are just ones unique to Provo, where we've at different events or with different partners identified opportunities to screen, primarily for things like depression screening, mental health screening, pre-diabetes, and then blood pressure. Those have been some of our focused areas in terms of community health need. I think of the 1,000 folks we screened within Provo, there were maybe close to 300 actually that identified with risk factors for one of those three concerns that we were able to, after screening them, connect them with needed services for whatever they were being identified.
Can I ask a question
with.
about that?
Yes.
Just in recent months, I've received some emails from citizens with particular ideas or concerns about a certain health crisis and wondering what the city's doing. So is this a good partnership that we should be more proactive with?
Yeah.
I mean, I just hadn't realized the possibility of sort of working, I mean, because you may be providing, I didn't want to, I don't have any health expertise for
Sure.
it, but I didn't want to, it seemed like maybe we shouldn't be and try to reinvent the wheel if there's already a community education effort going on.
Yeah, we've when we put these plans together based on the needs assessment, it's in conjunction with the health department, it's Mountain Lands, Wasatch Mental Health, many of the community health providers that at times are even much better than us at understanding some of the needs of the population and how to best meet those. And so we certainly don't try and do this on our own because we can't. We need their expertise too. So it's very much a collaborative effort, and would welcome if there's interest or if we need more avenues for input from the city. Would certainly love to have that. So these are our 7 priorities for the next 3 years that we'll focus on. I wish we could say the list was getting smaller. I think we had 4 in the previous 3-year cycle, and now we're up to 7. There's no shortage of things to work on, right? But as you can see, obviously we know mental health and suicides are really a growing epidemic within our state, within our community. Unfortunately, we witness this reality in our emergency department quite a bit, and actually it's quite scary to kind of hear and learn about how many youth are involved in attempts and suicide. And so we've been partnered up with United Way and an Everyday Strong campaign trying to really work on the needs of our kids in the community in terms of what can parents do, what can educators do, what can we all do to try and sort of create greater awareness and connect with resources. And resources are certainly a challenge. We are constantly recruiting psychiatrists. Every year we have multiple openings that we can't fill. It's a very difficult specialty to recruit. Adolescent psychiatry is even harder. And so we are constantly doing that. One quick note I'll make. One of the things that we are going to pursue next year, one in every 5 patients in our emergency room is coming in with a mental health issue, 20%. So there's a model that we're going to create that we've trialed in some other facilities in Intermountain that's worked quite well, called the Behavioral Health Access Center. The idea behind it is it's a 23-hour kind of 23-hour stay unit that is staffed with mental health professionals, including psychiatrists, where if you're coming in and that's your only need, you don't need to go into an emergency department and be screened and receive an emergency charge and potentially sit in an emergency room bed because there aren't any psychiatry beds available in our hospital or somewhere else in the state. There really is a shortage of those in our state. We'll have an alternative treatment area that's unique to care for people that are just in crisis. There are actually quite a few patients that can be treated and released within that 23-hour period once you get them through some of the crisis issues that don't need to be admitted. And we can do it in a much more affordable setting than an expensive ER setting is. It's actually better care for those that need it, and you don't have to go through the ER to get to it. You could actually come to the hospital and go directly into the access center if that's what your need is for.
How many of those 20% are repeat customers?
Quite a few. Recidivism rate's quite high. with behavioral health. One of my slides here, I'm almost done, has a comment around our behavioral health network. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but we, through our Intermountain Community Care Foundation, set money aside that we pay providers, social work, psychologists, therapists, prescribers in the community to help get patients that have come into our ER, come into our hospital for behavioral health needs and don't have access in the outpatient setting. We actually pay those providers to be able to get some of these patients that maybe don't have insurance or don't have a means to pay access to an appointment within 7 days of coming into the hospital. That's called our behavioral health network. I'm not aware of how many providers are currently on that, but we're always sort of looking to grow that because that's usually a gap in care as people come in. The ER is a last resort, but what they really need is good care in the outpatient setting, right? So trying to overcome some of the burden to accessing that is part of that network.
Just
Yeah.
real quick, I know we're peppering you with lots of questions.
It's fine.
Yeah. We'd love to have you back if you'd like. We just have some other pressing things.
No, I certainly understand.
Can I just say one, I just want to thank you as I look at your campus,
Yes.
all the infrastructure that Provo and you have been involved with. I know that you're a nonprofit, non-tax, that you have participated, and we're grateful for that participation.
Right.
We hope that partnership can continue because that is a drain on our service, the services that we provide. And you have been a good and we appreciate the efforts you put towards providing the services.
Great. Well, thank you. We want to be a good community partner. I look forward to getting to know all of you much better, hopefully personally, and let us know if there's more that we can be doing together. So,
Thank you very much.
all right. Thank you.
Very informative. Thank you as well. Item 5 is a discussion regarding authorization of a 108 loan agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to fund infrastructure for the airport. This will be presented by Mr. Gary McGinn, our Director of Community and Neighborhood Services.
Thank you. As part of the effort to get Duncan Aviation into Provo for economic development and providing job growth in the community, the city committed to put in certain infrastructure. Back in 2017, at the beginning of the year, the council authorized the administration to approach and make an application to HUD for CDBG funds through the Section 108 program to use for those, partially to use those funds to pay partial amount of the infrastructure necessary. We've done that. We now are in the process of finalizing documents, and we'll need to come back to the council at your next meeting in December for authorization to enter into our loan agreement, would draw down the approximately $2.5 million to pay for those funds, or to pay for those, use those funds to pay for the infrastructure. And so we're just dotting our I's and crossing our T's right now and going through the final due diligence of that. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks for that final resolution. Any questions?
Appreciate your conciseness. Any questions on this? Am I characterizing it correctly? This is something we've already agreed to. We're just, as we're going through the process, we'll need to authorize it one last time.
Yes, our application was approved. We have authorization to do it. We just need to have the final contract and a lot of the legal paperwork that we need to do to finish that.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. Item 6 is a discussion regarding recycling in Provo City. The discussion will be led by Councilor George Handley, as well as Mr. Bryce Rolfe, Sanitation Manager of Provo City.
So recently there's been some changes in the recycling market. Recycling is all in the news right now lately. It's been up and it's been down. So Just kind of wanted to give you guys an update of where we are, what's happening right now in the marketplace. First off, start with a breakdown of just some typical cities. This is cities that have recently done an audit on their contamination rates and comparing this to where we are. So Alpine is at a 22.23 contamination rate. Centerville really good at 15. Demographically, the higher the socioeconomic area, the better they do contamination rate-wise. You get into West Valley, South Salt Lake, and you're in the 30s. With that in mind, this is where we are. Sorry.
Could you explain what you mean by contamination rate?
Contamination is any product that, whether it's a good material that they can't take, or it's, whether it's cardboard that has glass in it, if it's cardboard that's wet, if it's cardboard that has oil on it, right? But it could also be just garbage that someone tosses in there. So any of those, it's a material that goes to the MRF or the recycling center that they cannot use, that they therefore have to haul to a landfill. So comparative to these cities, we as a district, not specifically as a city, fortunately it's not broken out, we're at 41.92%. So pretty staggeringly high. So you look at what we are, the OCC is your cardboard, the mixed paper is just any paper good, whether it's newspaper, your printer paper, magazines, newsprint, all of the mail that you get that you just toss straight into the garbage, any of that. PET is your recycle number one, is your plastic number one. ABC is aluminum, brass, and copper. HDPE, color and regular, that is recycled plastic number 2. And then your tin, obviously just your tin cans. Plastic 3 through 7 is just any of your other plastics. Plastic number 5 is your yogurt containers, your Cool It containers, and that material.
Is that contamination within the blue can?
This is contamination in the blue can, that's correct.
Just in the blue can.
This is in the blue can.
Just real quick to make sure I'm understanding, but that list of things, those are all the things that are recyclable.
These are the things
everything else.
that they can recycle.
Okay.
One thing I want to note here is this is what the market price is. If you look at 3 through 7, that's a negative. So we'll get into that. There's a big push to get rid of that right now, and we will be talking about that later on here in the presentation. This is what we're seeing. This is actually off of Grandview. Okay, this is actually off of your street.
Not my can.
Not your can. Not your can. So we have garbage. We have plastic with some food waste in it. There's a pizza box with some oil in it. This right here is tissues, used facial tissues, Right over here we have some metal in the can, plastic, and this the ice cream container still has ice cream in the bottom of it, just melted ice cream in the bottom of it. So this is what we see. This is actually really good. Believe it or not, this is actually really good cans. As I said, typically the higher the socioeconomic area you're in, Grandview, if you go out to Riverwoods, you go up into Foothill and stuff like that, you're going to get better recycling products in the cans. You go downhill, so this is dropping off the hill. This is 8th, south of 8th North, in between 5th West and Independence. This actually has lots of bags in it. All of this plastic from Venetian blinds. There were bags in there. All of that stuff is stuff that can't go in there. The bags especially are really bad because they get in the gears of the machines and they tear them up. They're horrible for the machines. Used filter here. This coming around the corner is more into our apartment complexes, right in that same area. Once you get into apartment complexes, you start really, you can see some really bad. This has food waste still in it. It's a meat container, or like sandwich meat that still has juice in it. Down here was all garbage. These wet rags. Obviously the big, what looks like stairs or some type of rack system can't get recycled. That's not material that we can pick up. Going around, this is right down the street from there. Styrofoam, there is no market. It's a recyclable material. Nobody takes it. It is straight garbage when it gets to there.
This was taken yesterday.
Yeah, these pictures were last night, and these three right here actually were this morning. So here, wood picture frame, there's clothing. It's not material that we can take. The final one here, this container was actually really good, but that bag. So anytime there's a bag in there, they can't, on the line, they won't take and open up a bag. So as soon as they see a bag, it just goes straight to the garbage. Number of reasons for that: if they open up a bag and a lot of times they'll open it up and it's just garbage, and now they have a sort line that's just littered with garbage. And so they don't take the time to open it, it just goes straight into the garbage. So this is what we're seeing.
Does that get dumped in the, you don't see this?
We don't see this because the driver, he's
just going to pick it up and dump it.
Right, so if this lid is...
And it's going to contaminate.
Right. So something like this right here, if he drives up in there and there's leaves sticking out of it and big branches sticking out of it, he's going to tag it and he won't pick it up. But most of this is closed, the lid's closed, the driver pulls up. He's not seeing this material until it's in his garbage truck. And he sees it in the camera, but by that time the packer's going back and packing it. He's not going to get back there and clean that up. It would take too much time. So this right here, this is our dumpster downstairs actually, our recycled dumpster downstairs. There's a matting from a desk, floor mat from a desk. Again, there's the library right here, bagged material. Again, it's something that we can't take.
So, how are we trying to educate the public on this? This is really bad. I mean, I would rather have, like, here are the 10 things we want, and get rid of the rest, because everything else is problematic.
So, if you give me a second, I'll get right to that. That's coming. That 10 things that we want is actually coming in just a second. Again, here's our rate, 41.92% compared to just some other cities that were tested. Again, you're talking West Valley, and you're talking South Salt Lake. Lower economic areas, and they're still far better than us. The one problem, caveat to this here, is we do not get divided out by cities, so I can't tell you that 41.92% is just Provo. I can't tell you how much of it's Santaquins, how much of it's Spanish, how much of it's Springville. I can't tell you that. We will, in the next few months here, be sending some trucks directly up to Salt Lake so that we can get just a recording of what our areas are. We're going to pick out some areas in the city, run trucks directly up to Salt Lake so that we can get a good understanding of what ours is. Okay. So as the market has fluctuated lately, here's our billing for the last few years. So going in to 2019, our billing coming from Rocky Mountain was at $50 a ton. June of 2019, we got billed at $60 a ton. July and August, $65. And our last bill as of September 2019 was $74 a ton. reflecting the market and what's happening with commodities.
What's the backhaul from R&R?
So the backhaul, so we're lucky in regards that we have a landfill. So one of the benefits that we have, and this is kind of a cost reduction to us, because all of this has to go to Salt Lake. This is the price in Salt Lake, not the price at our transfer station. So we're hauling up there, it's about $10 a ton to get up there. We receive a benefit for everybody that goes up there, any of the trash, so any of that contaminated material from all of the cities that go to Rocky Mountain, we get backhaul, so about 1 in every 5 loads we send up comes back with a load and goes to the landfill to dump. So we get this right here is what so we were getting $36 a ton. They've lowered that down to $32 a ton to offset some of their costs. But that's actually a benefit that comes back to us, which lowers some of our costs.
That's only 1 in 5.
Right, well, about 1 in 5.
You're paying 5 times 74.
And then we're getting $36 back on that.
So just to make sure you understand, because I didn't understand this either. What this is our trucks that are already going to Salt Lake, they're actually paying our trucking, paying us to truck garbage back that they've set out of the line. We pick that garbage up and haul it to the landfill.
Right.
And that's what they're compensating us for trucking that material.
Why don't they charge us that if it's our garbage?
Well, because it's not just our garbage. It's because we own the landfill, it's everybody that goes into Rocky Mountain. So we're getting the benefit, even though a lot of that's ours, we're getting the benefit of all of the other cities that are going there because they don't have the landfill to truck it to.
It's only every 5th truck, so
About 1 in 5. That's it. It can go up and down. Sometimes they'll have more than one in a day, but that's about the average.
And just to be clear, that's us. We have to pay $74 per ton to unload there, and then in this case, they give us 32 per ton when we haul that.
Right. And so we're still, if you think about it, we're still paying
About $340 net.
So, if you look at the 74, it ends up being about $10, so we're about $84 to round that load up. Every 5th one is coming back at $32 a ton. Take that into 5th, you're talking, $6 per ton coming back. So if you take that 85, we're at maybe 79. That's if we're lucky. So it's, it helps us out a little bit on the backhaul, but it doesn't help us out that much. So the district has recommended a rate increase to compensate for their new $79 to $85 per ton rate. So their recommendation is $85 a ton for member cities, $100 for county, and $100 for commercial. So that's Waste Management Republic. County is Santaquin, and any of the non-member communities in the county. Net changes for cities, that increases us by about $62,450 a year. Works out to about 48 cents a can is what that rounds down to. With that, trying to be just all-inclusive with recycle. The thought from long ago was that we just, whatever the recycle price is, we charge for recycling. Right now we're charging $7.70, is that what it is? $7.70. We're estimating the price goes up to $7.97 with that. So we're thinking that there will have to be an increase next year for recycling, so that so it's paying for itself.
So is the price increases you're talking about, are they effective like January 1st or
The prices that the district are paying are retroactive. So when you look back at this bill here, sorry, going the wrong direction here. That right there was the bill that they received on those dates. So for September, they're already receiving a $74 fee for that. Yeah, so whether we want to pay it or not, that's where the rate is.
Is that a cost per can per week?
That's per month. Per month. That's the cost per can per month. With the that's that $212,000 going back to this year is that $212,000 right there. So that's with the increase. Here's where we were this last year. This is what our new rate will be.
Right, but just for clarification, Mr. Stewart may have been asking, are we going to continue to pick up recycling every week? And the answer is yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes, that is correct, every week.
But that is a monthly cost.
Right, that's a monthly cost. The tipping fee would be essentially the same whether we do weekly or bi-weekly. And the cost, I think if I remember right, when we went from bi-weekly to weekly, it was about a 50-cent or maybe 60-cent change in price from bi-weekly to weekly. So it wasn't a major difference for us to do it, but it hasn't affected the total tonnage that came in any significant way, but it is a benefit to the residents.
So if you're going to tell us about the big three, and then so if you're actually transitioning a lot of the stuff that we've been putting in the bin to the garbage cans, and then you're also going to have tonnage charges on the garbage side.
So there will be some increases on the garbage side, but we're not. So let me get into the big three.
Bryce, could you just answer one more question?
Sure.
Do you know what our percentage is of people who are participating right now in Provo?
10,808 as of the last. So 10,808 cans. I think it was 10,600 or something total customers out of about 18,500. I think that comes to, if I remember right, it's been a long time since I pulled that number up, but I think it's about 56%, if I remember right.
What do we charge for the blue can a month?
Right now, I'm going the wrong direction there. Right now, we're charging $7.70 for it.
No. What are we charging the resident for a blue can?
$7.70. Right.
And that breaks even for us?
No. But
We break even?
we were breaking even, but with the new increase, we will not be breaking even.
Okay.
So that's,
I just want to relate that to something.
okay. Yeah, so we were at $7.70. If you take out $62,000 out of here, it's about a 48-cent decrease per can. So we were at 48 cents off of that there, so we were just under, so we were at $7.49 was our cost. $7.48 was our cost previous. So we were making 20-something cents a can. Now we're losing 27 cents a can. So at present.
Right.
So this is the top 10 in the bin. This is the current recommendation. What they're asking for is no plastic bags, glass, electronics, textiles, wax-coated cardboard. Trying to make it really simple. It's not, they're trying to just be really simple on what you can't put in and what you should put in.
So if you got a can of bottle of motor oil that you dumped out, but it's got residuals, you don't want that either, right?
No. So what that would do is all of that residual, right? So it gets dumped into the truck and there's a compactor in there. It's going to take that can and it's going to squish it up, which means all of that oil is going to shoot all through the cardboard and other material in there. And it's going to contaminate all of that other material. So it needs to be clean, it needs to be washed out. So what they are asking for is cardboard, newspaper magazines, food boxes, junk mail, aluminum cans, steel food cans, plastic water, soda bottles, clear white and colored jugs and plastic containers, paper bags and paper packaging. That is currently the program that we are doing, and that is the simplest method that we have right now. Okay, did you have a question?
Bryce, I wondered, on the cardboard, you can fit more in if you cut it up, make it smaller. Does that hurt or do they just chop it all up anyway?
No, they actually like that. There's a couple problems when it's not cut up. A lot of the time there's styrofoam in it, or there's other things in it. I know my wife loves to go out and take a bunch of junk, toss it in a box, and put it in the recycling bin. Well, what happens is when it gets down to that sorter, he's not going to be digging through a cardboard box to pull everything out. If it's, it's one of those things that gets tossed. So it needs to be independent. The box is broken down. That's easier for them to sort. It's easier for it to go up a conveyor belt for a computer to look at it and see what it is than a bunch of stuff inside of it.
So it's smaller. I just wanted to try to, I thought they put it in those bales. I thought
Yeah.
pieces trying to bale.
No, they want it cut down. So you were, Cliff was asking about the big three. This is a push that's going on in Trans-Jordan area where they're asking for corrugated cardboard plastic with next, that's 1 and 2 only, and then metal, food, and beverage cans. That's all they're asking for. They want no newspaper, no cereal boxes, styrofoam bags. This is your yogurt containers, your milk jugs. They're asking for none of that right now. They're restricting that. The thought is that brings down their cost. It brings down the material that's in it. It's going to bring down the cost of of everything that they do. It's all of their metrics are all going to come down when they have less product in there. We had talked about this for a little while. This was kind of the direction at one point in time we were looking at. Recently, as of last Friday actually, myself and Terry Ficklin, who's the general manager of Southern Utah Valley Solid Waste District, went to a recycling meeting up in Salt Lake. Saw some different opinions coming, and I think it's changed a lot of our opinion on what direction we're going. So because of that, there's a couple things coming down a couple changes coming to the market. And we think these changes will make a big difference. So in May of 2020, Waste Management is opening a new, they call them MRF, it's a material recycling facility in Salt Lake. Right now, their capacity is about 12,000 tons a year. Rocky Mountains is about 12,000 tons a year. This new MRF will be able to, it's programmed for a minimum of 30,000 tons per year. If you look at the combined total in the market right now, we're under 30,000. So they could take everything that's in the market plus. The thought in the industry is when you put that much investment into a big new facility, you want product going into that facility. The last thing you want to do is spend that much money on a facility and have no product going to it. So we think that's going to impact the market in a positive way. It's going to suck all the product out of Rocky Mountain. I don't know what that's going to do to Rocky Mountain. It's probably going to take a lot of the product that they have right now. It's going to change the market in a lot of ways. First off, it's a lot more technical. They have 6 optical sorters. With the optical sorters, those are computers that can tell what's coming down that conveyor belt. With that, they should be able to meet that 5.5% standard that China's asking for now. So just off of that machine, without adding more labor, without slowing down the belts, they should be able to meet that new target number. So that opens them up to shipping to China and sending a lot more product out to China. Right now, most MRFs have about 3. If you're really good, they have 4 optical sorters in it, so 6 that's a high-tech facility. Each of those sorters are millions of dollars a piece, and they are you can fine tune those to pick out whatever you want. So they have 6 of them in there. It's going to be able to really fine tune it down into whatever they want to pull out. Second thing that's coming is Crossroads Paper Mill. There's been a lot in the news about it. It's opening, it is a little ways away in 2022, but they will be able to take mixed paper. So mixed paper is, their machines will be able to take mixed paper and cardboard and make a cardboard pulp out of it. So that's something we're really excited about. If you look at kind of, this is straight off their, this is their map that they gave, but I think it bodes well to look at where they are and look at, you know, what's in the area. There's nobody else in the area. So it's a great market for them. The fact that they have nobody else around, there's no competitors.
Where are they going in?
It's going in, so they picked out 2 locations. They wouldn't tell us where yet.
Okay.
Obviously, you know, we would like it to be down here. The president, CEO of the company is a local Provo guy. So, in fact, he started as an intern here at the city of Provo in the sanitation department. So, we would like to see it here, but I'm not sure if that's where it's going.
What's his name?
John Sassoni.
Remind him where he comes from.
Bryce, a couple things. So right now, the website, you said we're moving to keep the top 10?
Yes, that was a mistake, and that's getting corrected.
Okay. So the website right now is incorrectly showing the big 3,
Yeah.
not the top 10.
That was programmed and it went live before I had to stop it.
So I always thought you wanted like scrap metal.
Scrap metal is great to go to Western Metal, but it doesn't go through the sorting systems. The sorting systems are developed for household. And if you send a big chunk of steel in there, their conveyor belts, their systems just aren't made for that. That's, if you have a big chunk of steel, that goes straight up to Western Metals, and they'd be happy to take it from you.
Okay, last question is, some places you see where they use plastic in maybe even roadways.
There's a move for that. When it comes to the one-offs, I'm always really hesitant about what's going on in the marketplace. My thinking is, if you don't see Waste Management going out and buying the company, there's probably something that's they might have just a small market. Maybe they can only do a certain amount of product, because if it was the answer to the market, one of the big guys would go buy it out because they can make billions of dollars from it. They're not gonna take it and put it in the closet. They're gonna take it and use it because they want the money from it, right? So if there's some system that comes out that's gonna solve the problem, one of those big companies is gonna be pushing that right down. There's so much plastic in the world that if there was one system, or there was a system that could fix it, it would be bought, and we would see it going up everywhere.
You and I have talked about this. I mean, clearly you have a lot more experience and frustration with the ineffectiveness of public education efforts, but something's got to change if we want to get from 41% even down to 25%, which still seems to be unacceptable.
Yeah, so
But I'm hoping the administration and the city council and we can all join together and make this a really strong message for the city.
this is
unacceptable.
I think this is our answer that we're going to try and push. So, talking to the Sustainability Committee, I know they volunteered a lot of help. There's BYU students that want to help. So we're going to try and go out and drive the message home. The plan is right now, at least from my side, I want to take that truck that I was talking about. I want to take a truck, find out what our actual percentage is, send it up to Salt Lake, find out, hey, what is Provo's actual number? I'd like to do it in a moderate income area, maybe over here in the Tree Streets. George, that's your area. find out what that area is, take that up there, and then hit it with, hit that area with some flyers, hit that area with marketing, see what we can do, then take and test that after 3 months or whatever that area.
Competitive,
See-
these neighborhoods, honestly, this works very, very effectively. People don't want to look bad, and if you say Tree Streets is recycling, 5% contaminated stuff, right? And the Foothills neighborhood is at this percentage or whatever, people
So,
get on board.
I think that's going to be our first step, is to find out. We need to test our own selves. We can't be relying on what's coming from everybody. So our first step is to get a good benchmark of what we are running. We're going to do it in a few neighborhoods, send trucks directly up, find out what our baseline is, and then we're going to see what metrics, what we can change on that dial. Real fast, to answer your question, George, if we dropped it down to 20%, our savings puts us back at that $64.73. That's just off the drop it at 20%. So our answer to our cost, right, is to drop the contamination rate. So we can simply drop the contamination rate. There's our savings. So that's instead of trying newfangled.
You can say, you want your can to go down $1.50, well,
Yeah.
be more careful.
Yeah, and that's the truth. That's where they're gonna save money, is by tightening that up. And so we need to get that out. We need to get that out to the public. And I think that's the answer, instead of changing to the big three, instead of changing what we're doing, hit the contamination.
I think, I like the competition idea that George brought up, but people need to understand visually by maybe seeing a garbage truck go to the landfill and then say, this is your recycling going to the landfill because we didn't do it right as a community.
Right.
And if you don't do it right, it just goes right here, and it costs us all more because it goes through a whole bunch of work, and then it ends up there anyway.
So I think what we'll do, we are in the next few months, we're going to try and get with Channel 17 and do some videos. I think maybe when we go up and do that sort, that'd be a great opportunity to bring Channel 17 in so that they can see what's getting pulled out of there. So there is a few opportunities that we have. I don't want to, this isn't a Salt Lake model where we put 5 new employees out, that we hire 5 new guys to go out and just to advertise. I don't want to do that because our cost skyrockets on 5 new employees. I think this is something that we can do in-house, utilizing our sustainability committee, utilizing BYU, but it's something that we're going to have to target over the next year.
Yeah, the first thing I wrote down as you were talking is education. I'm looking at my own household recycling, and we have a bag, kitchen bag, and then recycling bag. We throw all the recycling in, and then once or twice a week we take it out to the can. So all of our material is in a bag, and I'm embarrassed about that. So, but I had no clue. I mean, I read the top of the bin occasionally because I'm like, is this recyclable or not? I read the top of the bin, but it doesn't say anything about that. So I think education is critical, and Mr. Councilor Connect was just saying something about visually, and I thought he was going in a different direction. I think it's one thing to read, okay, ABC, but what does that mean or whatever? And I can almost see like a game, where you go through and you check yes or no, is this recyclable? And you throw a bunch of things out there, and you have a cardboard box with styrofoam in it. Is that recyclable? Anyway, I think there's some things, because it's a little bit hard. I've seen flyers before, but I don't remember the flyer, a week later when I'm doing this stuff. Just the thought that I had in my head is a little game online that you click through pictures and you say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And when you complete that, then you get a sticker to put on your recycling can that says I'm a responsible recycler or something. We talk about that air pressure. If you're the only one in the street that doesn't have your sticker on your thing, I think there's it may take some creativity And I don't want to hire 5 new people, but if we can get Channel 17 on board, if we can get our sustainability on board, if we can get some, we can get some BYU students who will create that little app for us. You know, I think it will take some creativity to just to educate the people, because I think there's a lot of people like me who would like to be educated, just don't know how.
I think one of the major problems that we have in Provo is, and we confront this all the time, is we don't always have Provo is a very, with the 2 universities, is a very moving dynamic, right? So you get an apartment that moves in, and if you teach those guys, you know, what you can have in a bin, that doesn't mean that in 6 months when they all move out, that the next guys are gonna know the same exact thing, you know, or you get somebody that moves from Alabama or Washington or California, they come with a whole different mentality of what can go in there and what can't.
So we need to work with BYU, educate those freshmen.
So I've been a scrapper for years. I frequent flyer at Western Metals. And my wife, well, we used to keep the aluminum cans. And after a while she says, you know, I'm really tired of them just being in a bag for 6 months and then you take them down. So we just now put them in the recycling. But the last time I did take some down there, I learned something. She had carefully cleaned all the pie pans and the other things that, maybe a turkey pan, whatever. And she put that in with the aluminum cans. And they took them all out. And they put them on the side, and I said, so what's that? He says, that's garbage. I said, it's aluminum. He goes, that's garbage. He says, the company that they currently send their aluminum cans to will absolutely not take that type of aluminum.
Right.
He says, that goes in with our steel. It's just basically our lowest class metal. We will take it, but we're not going to pay you really anything for it.
Right.
So it's to the point where you don't want that, it's probably either.
Well, Rocky Mountain and those guys will still take it, and they might get 10 price for it instead of, but you know, their 10 is still a benefit to them, right? Even though they're getting 10 prices for it. If they can get aluminum prices for it, that's even better. As I said, they're ABC. If you look at the difference between ABC, which is, as I said, aluminum, brass, copper, you look at ABC versus 10, you're almost the same percentage there. Okay. So ups and downs on the two of them. They might make a little bit more off of it, but you know, it's not a major. And as long as, you know, the biggest thing is, you know, don't be putting that big anvil in. You know, they don't want that. It's metal, but they don't want it. So they want household.
Are we basically instructing people that if you have heavy metal, take it down to Western Metal?
Directly down to Western Metal.
I work for the church. We also see anything under the sun into the dumpsters, and that goes down, and they have to deal with whatever at the transfer station.
Right.
And I don't know, you know, what they appreciate at the transfer station because they don't have necessarily a big magnet to pull out the metal.
That's why we do, when we do the cleanup, we have the scrap metal bin.
Yeah.
And, you know, we love that stuff in the scrap metal bin. It all goes as 10, but, you know, we do recycle all that. It goes to Western Metal for that. And that's what that's there for, is the bigger pieces, the you know, cans, the pie plate type material.
I'm glad the other 2 days both admitted to having learned something from this presentation. Our family has been doing several things wrong, and I really appreciate learning about this. But on the theme of education, I like the idea of a sticker for, you know, educated recycler kind of a thing. And I was also thinking about reading the can itself. I've tried to do that too when my wife and I have been trying to figure out what to, you know, in the can. If there's some way to get a sticker on there that would stay, and I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, we tried to put that on there. Unfortunately, it does tend to fade. And if it's any consolation, I'm the recycling, you know, the sanitation manager, right? And I try and be really good about it. But I have kids and I have a wife, and, you know, I'm not saying my can is perfect because
Are you saying kids in the wife are a liability?
sometimes, yes.
You're on camera.
I would like to, I'm going to be at the board meeting tomorrow, and one of the things I'd like to challenge the rest of the district to do is to have a competition. I don't know how that would go over. Wayne, you have more experience there, but I mean, if we're part of the problem, great, we'll try to solve it. And if it turns out that we can get our rate down, or we are already way down below what other people are, that 42% is terrible.
Right.
So every city in that district has to make a commitment to do something about it. Otherwise, it'll just stay high, even if we go down, right?
Well, we are,
We are
what,
the-
40% or something?
Yeah, we're the biggest dog in the hunt on this.
So we're
one,
likely a major contributor.
Likely, true.
A couple suggestions. So one would be, on the earlier screen, you had Centerville 15%. They were doing the best job. Now,
Yeah.
Centerville isn't the highest cost of living, highest economic class of city either, but
The reason I think Centerville is so high, or so low, because I think that's a lot of business. And I think that's business recycling more than household recycling.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of offices out there that do recycling. I think that's what you're seeing
Okay.
as a mixture in
Well, my
there.
question was, what are they doing differently? The other was, can we find money within the sanitation budget to do a kind of a PR campaign around it? Because the reality is, we have to do this education over and over and over again, because we do forget, our kids get to different ages.
We've thrown the challenge at Nicole to come back and tell us what's the best
I
approach to
think that's
this.
where it's going to come from.
I think you'll find some fun ideas and some of the things you've raised, I'll make sure to pass on to her.
Right.
So one of the challenge, and when we talk about we, this is Provo South in the county, right? And being a resident of South Utah County, Salem City does do curbside recycling, but they just started not too long ago. And a lot of these cities have the big, huge bins where, it's really easy to dump garbage in those big bins. And I think that's part of what you're seeing as well. The more curbside recycling you have, the little more control you have over it. So, George, in the district, I would challenge those other cities to get on board with, really policing those. In fact, we've got dumpsters here in Provo City we've had to remove because of that problem.
Yeah,
It just becomes a dumping ground, and then it's all contaminated. And, so anyway, I think that's my opinion. I don't know that that's the fact, but living in South Utah County, I know a lot of those cities down there just have the big bins next to the grocery store, and at night people dump whatever in them. So
We've recently removed the ones from Fort Utah for contamination purposes. The other factor that we have that the rest of the county doesn't have is we do it ourselves. This is my guys that go out and pick up these cans versus having a third party go up and pick up the cans. The problem is when the third party picks up the cans, he's getting paid. They're getting paid per can. Their job is to pick up as many cans as possible and move down the road. They're not going to be tagging cans. They're not going to be caring about what's in the can, which my guys do. And so I think that's another factor that I personally don't think we're that bad, but I think we are a major factor of it.
I was going to say, I think too, the education probably we need to have some thoughts about the education about event-specific activities. I know, a couple of years ago, my wife was the one in charge of running the recycling for the Hispanic Festival, right? We probably spent 3 weekends afterwards with the entire east side of our house, our carport they're stacked with bags and bags and bags and bags of what she had recovered from recycling that we sorted and washed, and probably less than half of it was actually recycled. Right? We spent 3 weekends sorting trash into our trash cans so that we could actually take the cans.
42%?
Yeah, exactly. So that we could take the cans to the recycling place, because if you just put something out there for people to put stuff in, they're not going to pay attention to what they put in.
All right, fascinating conversation. Well over time. Any parting thoughts?
That's pricey.
The only thing, Mr. Harding, I'd mention just very quickly is recyclables will continue to be a moving target. This probably is the last time we'll have this discussion about what you can put in the blue can. And we just want you to know that as the market changes, we'll try to be sensitive to that. We'll be back to talk about this again. So,
Thank you for that. Hopefully next time it'll be better news. It'll be about how these facilities are open and they're desperate for material. And
yep.
so we'll always need to be responsible about making sure it's clean what we put in. So thank you.
I just want to add, Elizabeth always reminds me of this, and when we talk about the environment, reduce, reuse, and recycle, and the priority is in that order: reduce, reuse, and recycle. So there's other things we can do to even keep it out of recycling.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. All right, we have a 5-minute break scheduled, and we are 35 minutes late. But
Take 4.5.
We take 4.5, 4 minutes and 45 seconds. Let's try to get back here quickly.
Real quick.
going to pick up on item number 7, an ordinance amending the West Gateway Zone to better meet the purpose and objective of the zone. This affects Dixon and Franklin neighborhoods. Be presented by Mr. Brian Maxfield, Planning Supervisor.
Thank you. This item is an effort to make some changes. It's not a new zone, it's just modifications to existing zone. The purpose is to facilitate some redevelopment in the area. What we found is from some of the development community, there were little nuances in the current zone that make it hard to put a product together to get the cost down to make it work. One of those, for instance, would be the number of floors within a building. The change we're proposing doesn't change the overall height. It doesn't allow any more height in the development, but it would allow, doesn't mandate that there's a maximum number of floors. This was a change you made to the DT1 zone and some others where you got rid of that floor reference and just kept it at a maximum height. There are other changes in there that clarify the idea of apartments and how they would fit into that area. And at the same time, we're also trying to clarify the transition areas as they extend to the north from Center Street, extend to 100 North as well as 100 South, and that those would transition to single-family attached, detached. It wouldn't be the apartment units. It's kind of that way now, but there's some little strangeness the way it's worded in the ordinance. We think this would be clear. Let's see, I did just orient you again. Oops, let me go back. I turned the wrong one. Let me go back to the first one, if I can do that. Sorry, we got 2 sets of PowerPoints here. Okay, this first one, just to orient you where this WG or West Gateway Zone is. This is the Maverick, where Reeves used to be. There on 900 West. So basically 800 West and Center Street down toward the freeway, and then on the Franklin neighborhood, it extends down through that 900 West block. And so you can see that for the most part of is toward the Dixon neighborhood, with only one single block there really in that Franklin neighborhood. This has the various text amendments, but then we also have a little bit of some standards. We'll talk a little bit about this one. And one proposal was to go to a 3-foot setback from the 13 feet we would otherwise have, meaning you've got a park strip of 7 feet, a sidewalk of 6, so with that other 3 feet, 16 feet away. The Planning Commission, their recommendation, made a motion to stay with that 10 feet behind that property line setback. So basically, and again, it varies a little bit, but that's obviously 7 feet difference on that. Okay, we can jump to the other PowerPoint now. With this one shows a little more the controlled area on the corner. Use the example of 1000 West and Center Street, but just showing how much area that takes. In the blue here, you can see what the other setback would be. This a little closer. If you had a 3-foot setback, it'd be to here. If you had a 10-foot setback, it's this much difference. An example of that happens to be down the street. This actually has a 15-foot setback, so the otherwise it'd be 16. This one actually works. The normal sidewalk is a little different here. It would be deeper on this property if it had been built, not a retrofit on an existing building. But this shows you what that 3-foot setback plus 1 more foot on that would be, and just to give you a better idea of what that means. The other changes in here, we did have one that changed a little bit on warehousing, because the way it was worded, it gave the more generalized category, and I think the intent was to make it tie it into a building. There's a building in Springville that actually has storage inside the building that you wouldn't even recognize. And so we reworded it that kind of allows that kind of a concept, that if you had storage units in the areas back from the commercial portion of the block, in some of those buildings, and again, not against the neighborhood, but in that middle ground, that would be a reasonable use. The biggest thing we want to remind you is this area is a commercial zone. the most part. The intent is to really have commercial, but we try to do mixed uses in there to allow some uses on those upper floors that, kind of create somewhat more of a community down there. The reason, people might live down there and really create a nice entryway into the city. Any questions?
Brian, help me on that 3-foot setback again. Did it always require that the plant strip is a certain width, and the sidewalks a certain width, so you've already automatically gotten so far off the street and then the 3-foot?
Yes, we have an adopted standard. This is a 7-foot park strip and then a 6-foot sidewalk. Variations of that keep another foot on the side. And as you know, we do have some residential areas, other areas where the sidewalk's actually inside the property line. This one, the property line's, shows up down here, but again, off an air photo, it's not really accurate. But, the idea of what we want to do is behind that curb line is show you what the relationship was.
Brian, help me understand what why we're doing, you say this will make it easier to develop. What's the 1 foot, 3 foot?
Oh, the overall change is what we're saying. For the setbacks, the advantage would be just picking up 7 feet of building.
Okay, and the overall changes is just everything in the ordinance.
Right, it's more of the floor heights and some of the other clarifications on the uses and other things that way.
And if we had people coming in saying, I would do it if?
Yes. In fact, they've been speaking, I think, I don't know if that's on RDA discussions or other things, but looking at ways to try and put tools together so that we can get something underway. Things have been right on the edge. It's just enough to maybe kick it in here.
So I don't mind the 3 foot on a main road. Makes sense to be closer, like Carbs America. That doesn't look bad. But it seems like we've run into trouble occasionally where we let something get too close to the sidewalk and street, and then, oops, what about those power lines? So are we looking at things like power lines as part of the equation?
We have with the utilities different, besides power lines, separation for water and gas and different things that way. And I'm trying to, in my mind, go off these utility lines. But those have been issues that we're trying to discuss to have access. How do we keep the separation? I think some of it was getting that 7 foot in and whether that's used, but there is that 3 feet that would be on the other side of the sidewalk. In the past, a lot of those have been a 1 foot distance. This way, we know we've at least got 3 feet. Ideally, I think you talk to some utilities, they'd love to have 15 feet, of the whole area and just be able to go through, so I don't know.
So you have 3 feet to the building, but you still allow a balcony to come out?
Could to the right-of-way line, so it could overhang 3 feet toward that right-of-way line.
So you mentioned the planning commission recommended going to 10 feet, but the original staff recommendation was to stick with 3 foot, if I remember.
Correct.
Is that right? And that would be consistent with what we see along Center Street.
Can I recharacterize that?
Yeah, sure.
So currently, the zone requires 10 feet. The proposal is to move it from 10 feet to 3 feet. When the planning commission looked at it, they recommended that we approve it, but keep it at 10 feet, not allow it to drop to 3.
Thank you, that's a better way to say it.
And just to further clarify, whereas staff had recommended that we change it
Yes.
for this zone.
Change it from 10 to 3.
That was principally the main area discussion. Well, wasn't even really discussed with planning commission. It was kind of presented at the end of their motion, so we didn't really go in depth on that discussion. But were there other items in these amendments you wanted to?
So often in the past, we would have different setbacks depending on the building height. So if it's really, really tall, maybe you don't want it at 3 feet. Maybe you do have it at 10 feet. But if it's like Carpets American, it's not that big, maybe 3 feet. The impact, the mass and the visual impact.
We have that further down on Center Street as you go in through town here. We call those step backs, where they go up and then the building steps back. I'm trying to think of, this one right now is 50 feet. Or 50, is it 55? And it was at least 50, okay.
You're right, 50.
Normally, those other ones, if I'm not mistaken, I think they're downtown, it's a two-story one because they were trying to match what existed on some of the other areas more than, you're entirely correct, though, the closer the street is, the more canyon-like effect it would have. If a wider street's there, it's not going to have quite the same effect.
So is there a way to factor that in so that based on the height of the building?
You could say if you got the second or third, well, not the second story, but I think the third or the fourth, maybe there's a step back that could occur that way. Somewhere in there. You know, you at least want to probably go up a couple of stories before you did that.
I believe previously it was limited to 3 stories, as well as 50 feet. But by just taking out the 3 stories and keeping it at 50 feet, we have a 4-story building, yet still 50 feet.
Along Center Street, you have the commercial floor still as a requirement, which is usually a little bit taller than a residential floor. And so you think if you had one residential and at least commercial on the ground floor and at least a floor of residential above that. Maybe 2 high. I don't know, we've looked into that in detail.
So maybe if it's theoretically possible to have 4 stories, if it goes over 3 stories, you have that top floor move back. It's less of a canyon.
We did that on Center Street, and then we revised it and brought it, said you can bring it back forward for a while, didn't we? We had it back quite a ways, trying to avoid that canyon.
I was trying to remember if that was, I know we did on a portion of Center Street, and I was trying to remember how far we did that, but it was because of the one across the street, Liberty Center, I think. Was that where we addressed it?
Well, I think it had to do with some with 63 also.
63,
yeah.
We
got to there. Okay.
That
Before
is
that.
trying to make, we did pull back on some setbacks, and so I think as we look at those, we ought to be a little careful and realize why we did what we did when we did it.
Well, I agree, Gary, but in this case, the planning commission is saying, oh yeah, just 10 feet, well, 3 feet under any circumstance. And I guess I'm throwing it out there that maybe you can do 3 feet under some circumstances, and then if it gets high enough, you bump it back to what the planning commission wants.
And a tapered setback is different than just straight up and down.
Right.
Whether it's 10 feet or 3 feet.
Did you characterize it as it was a decision by the planning commission that was towards the tail end, they just discussed it among themselves and didn't really ask the staff on that? Or how would you characterize their process to get to the point where they recommended not changing it to 3?
One of the planning commissioners mentioned it earlier, and just said, you know, I think more comfortable with the 10 feet. I think that, you know, the other may be getting too close. It wasn't an in-depth discussion after that, but after they first made the motion, they made an amendment to that motion to add the change back to 10 feet, and that was accepted by the planning commission. So through the amended motion, that's where the 10-foot came in.
I think an email got forwarded to you. As I went through this, there were some specific questions I have. Line 256 is an asterisk. It says that allows one-family attached housing using a PUD, but that shall comply with the minimum 20,000 square foot lot size. So that in 246, we dropped the 20,000 to 10,000. So I wasn't sure if that just.
Yeah, we made that correction. You were entirely right. Okay. It didn't coincide with the other dimension up higher. It would have been kind of, okay, which one are we going with? So we did make that change.
I'm just going to that bubble.
So we deleted a line about it, so everything's restricted.
Perfect. That's good.
And I think you had a second one that we also felt was
and then so that
correct.
The amended the implied motion tonight will be what we see on the screen?
Right.
Okay, and so then 277, 3 feet minimum perfect, that addresses that.
Yeah, we added minimum behind each of those, so that was clear that way.
Okay. 287, I don't think I asked this in the email, but just looking at this. The current standard is 20 feet of rear setback. Now it's proposed to go to 25. I'm just curious the rationale behind that change. Because actually it looks at 282 there.
I can't remember. I know it's been a couple of months.
Okay. It does provide a little more separation between the use on
I think
first
that was the
floor.
discussion, was the transition toward the north or to the south.
Yeah. So by giving up 7 feet on the front end, you give up 5, or you add 5 feet to the rear, take away 7 from the front.
A little bit more separation between the single family attached and detached.
I think
And again, I'm just trying to recall it from 2 months ago, but it seemed like it was something along that line.
And we ran into that situation with the Maverick there, next to the people, and so I think that they were trying, maybe we feel it's better to have that 5 foot extra. I don't know if that's through experience or just an arbitrary thing. That's interesting.
I know that was the main topic of discussion, was that transition, to make sure that we clarified the single-family attached and detached along 100 North, that transition area is maintained, that you didn't start crowding in with the other units toward that area. And that's all I can think of where that came from.
So a couple of things, I think I talked about the sight lines on the intersections, and I saw your graphic earlier address that, so I see that it is in there. We're not, by dropping this front setback to just 3, we're not precluding those 25
Right, they would still have to meet that.
sight lines, and that, so that's important. On the old 348, it talks, we're changing there, so we're changing from public street to a primary street, and then it also refers to secondary streets there. Do we have a definition in our code? What is a primary street, secondary street, or what do you understand that to?
Yeah, we use it in several of our zoning areas. I mean, downtown and some of the others. Primary streets means 2 things. One is your primary frontage, which your main access to,
Okay.
versus the secondary frontage on a corner lot. The other kind of sometimes comes into play because if one street's larger than the other, say one's an arterial street, one's a collector, then the larger of the 2 becomes the primary. And I think in this particular case, the one I was showing you, at least on there on that corner, probably applies both ways. But in either case, the primary one is the real frontage for the property, where the secondary is the side area.
So when I read that paragraph, to me in my head, that meant that Center Street, you know, a building facing Center Street has to have that 30, and then a building facing 9th West can be commercial, but then has a different standard there.
Right, 1000 Western.
Yeah,
10th or 9th,
West,
either
any,
one.
Any of those. But what you just described sounded to me like it would only be corner lots, and now they have a primary and secondary. Are we?
It's playing the hierarchical one in that case, you know, which is the larger, so you'd look at, I think, the block. I know there's one of those things we use all the time, it's kind of jargon, or use more, and you're trying to think, okay, what do we mean by that? But, yeah, the largest of the streets in that case would be the primary.
Can we go back to your schematic layouts on that?
Oops, it's the other, yeah.
Yes, probably the slide before that. The slide before that. That. Actually, we have the one, I think it's Exhibit B.
Oh.
That actually shows Center Street, shows.
Then that
First
goes
North,
back to the
shows-
first group. I'll try and combine these for tonight, that's
Thanks for all the driving data, I appreciate that. Yeah, this one here. Can we just scroll, just center that a little bit?
Yeah, so in this case, here's 100 North, here's Center Street above, so I guess this would be 10th West.
If you hold the control, you can scroll down.
Okay, yeah. Be nice if we had a little less headers on there. It takes up a lot of screen. Okay, so, and that's upside down. So we've got a couple of commercial properties facing whatever that side secondary street is.
Yeah, so
That might be
if there's a
9th or
center, you could call this
9th or 10th
Yeah.
or 11th. And so everyone would understand that those two properties would just be, would have the regulations based on the secondary street. Okay. And then the other thing that I was thinking, I like the idea of having a 25-foot setback between the uses on First North and commercial uses there. But yeah, so I like that buffer. But if towards the interior of the block you have commercial uses that go back to that 100-foot residential only, kind of that buffer there on First North. You mind if I just come up and point to it? It's going to be easier to describe.
We can try to find a larger one if you want to give us just like 30 seconds, or you can work with
I think
this.
I'm just about done here. But so if we had a commercial use here and it came back to this 100-foot back, this now becomes a 25-foot setback here where you've got commercial use, you've got commercial use. I don't know that that 25 feet is all that helpful on that interior.
Right, I will double check because I thought it was next to a resident, or I'll double check on that.
Okay. Anyway, so we were showing this 20 going to 25, and that seems perhaps wasted space. I think this 25 and 10 is valuable space for the residents or whatever, but this space that might be kind of wasted. So anyway, just when looking at that, and perhaps that's something that, you know, if it's necessary, we can make a tweak later on. Any other questions, thoughts? Thank you very much.
I think that's not only wasted space, but I think it's a little dangerous space. I mean, leaving that little, I don't know, unless it's for fire or something.
Oh, like this here?
Yeah, well, the green space that he was talking
Oh.
about, yeah, those. I don't, unless they need that for fire codes or something. I just see a lot of people maybe going in and camping there or something like that. It's a great hideout for some.
Good point.
All right, I believe we are now to item 8, an ordinance amending the zone map classification of property 1.11 acres of property generally located at 688 North, 100 West from residential conservation to high-density residential and medium-density residential. This is in the North Park neighborhood and will be presented to us by Dustin Wright, Provo City planner.
Okay, so here's the property location. It's on 700 North, the corner of 100 West. It's got close proximity to Brigham Young University, downtown, and UBX station. It's got this property here that's highlighted in red is the area that the applicant would like to request the high-density residential, the HDR zone for the project that he's looking to build, which would be a 20-unit multifamily project. The areas adjacent to it in blue are existing developments. And the reason those are being proposed was to help with, since the whole property is in this RC zone, there's some transitional standards that would apply for his project. But with how this block has already been developed, it's mostly a high density to medium density neighborhood on this block. Most of what's built out to that density already, but it is an RC zone. So the applicant reached out to these neighbors and said, we're indirect fee put to the MDR zone for your properties, so that some of the transitional landscape buffer requirement applied. And so they were okay with doing that. So that was telling here, there's nothing proposed to be 12 units, but we thought it was something that fit on this block with whatever was already set.
So in the surrounding, or in the area that's up there for us to look at, are any of the properties currently developed to the HDR density level?
Yeah, there's a handful of them that are going to be at the HDR level, and then a handful at the MDR level, and then some that would probably be in the LDR. So if in the future, if some of the smaller LDR ones assembled with some adjacent properties, they'd be in that MDR to HDR range. So,
what about the senior housing, which is on the corner, just to the west?
This corner over here?
Yeah. What density does that equate to
Not
MDR,
exactly.
HDR?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure on that density. I mostly looked at this block here, the property zone, but I don't look across the street to what that would be. I'm not sure how many.
So that's pretty much the biggest apartment house or whatever in the neighborhood.
Yeah, there's one of these down here is like 72 units or something. So there's, kind of a mixture of between that MDR and HDR.
What's the parking requirements for the HDR then?
So what they're proposing they're going to do 1-bedroom units. So they'd be at 1.5 stalls per unit, and they're providing like 1.6 units or stalls per unit.
Because we do have a lot of those streets are busy. People park on 100 North and walk through because you can't park on University anymore. So they'll park. We have that experience in Carterville area. That's what they're doing. They're parking in the neighborhoods and then walking across the bridge. And so this is happening on 100 West. That's a very busy night. It's packed.
Yeah, so one of the nice things I liked about the way they designed this project is the parking is underneath the units. It's around the back of the units, and then they have parking along the south side here as well. So they have enough parking to meet the parking requirement without asking for any reductions there. So, and again, with its proximity to UBX and BYU and downtown, that's kind of what we're looking to see there. So I think parking-wise, it should be there. So yeah.
Was the neighborhood meeting that held on this?
Yeah, they had a neighborhood meeting. They worked with the neighborhood chair. He was comfortable with that, and said, most of this block probably would fit in that range as well. So,
any pushback from neighbors? Have you heard any complaints?
I haven't heard anything from direct neighbors. Others have just kind of asked in general, about the RC zone and should it change or not. I think with that, there's the RC zone plays a good role in some of the, our pioneer neighborhoods where we're trying to preserve that single-family product that we have in the city. Whereas in this area, there's duplex, single-family home that would be part of that, but there's really not a lot of single-family home that you'd be trying to preserve there on this block. So that's why this block seemed like it made a little more sense. That RC zone kind of just went in and was applied pretty heavily throughout the city in different areas.
So, since I was around when we did the RC, I remember two purposes. I mean, there's residential conservation. It was like things were upzoned. I don't know if it was in the 60s or 70s. In some places it seemed like to the moon, and people came in and did all sorts of weird stuff. And so we basically put the brakes on, froze everything, but did it in a way that didn't create non-conforming uses. The RC was kind of unique that way. And sure, it's great if something is a viable neighborhood to preserve whatever, but it acted as a way to say, okay, we're open to good development, because we haven't been getting good development. But if you want to show us good development, then we'll rezone it for you. Otherwise, it stays RC.
that's what's happening here is, you know, this whole block has that, you know, it's a lot of different uses that probably came in at different times, and so that got frozen, and now we're saying, okay, let's take a look at these individual projects as they're assembled and brought in, and if they're a good project and makes sense, then let's consider that. So I think that's where we're at on this one.
Okay, excellent. We are going to push on. Thank you, Mr. Wright. We have 3 items left. 2 of them are on, 2 different tax increment financing questions. We have them at 25 minutes apiece, and then we have a 30-minute, something planned for 30 minutes for number 11, which puts us already past our start period for our Board of Canvassers. I don't, well, so we'll have to use our time, obviously, carefully. That's a good question. So the thought was, you know, are there items that we can just move directly to the evening meetings since we'll be talking about them? I'm thinking that item number 9 probably does not need the 25 minutes that we have budgeted to it for it.
I talked with, I have to see him here. Talked to David Walker. Oh, you're up there. Okay, good. He's happy to go a little bit quicker.
Okay, so let's do that. I think we may have a little more conversation on item 10, but some of that could go. Do we know, is Brian Maxfield here? Okay, don't see him yet. I'm not certain how much of the 30 minutes he needs on that one as well. Looking at all 3 of these, I think that we really just have one larger conversation, and we've got.
I'll reach out to Brian Maxfield, just have him give you a very tight summation of what that issue's about, and then you can deal with it later.
Okay, thank you.
We'll also do that in the council meetings. But you do need to deal with it tonight.
Okay, yes, all right. Mr. Walter, will you present on item 9, resolutions authorizing the RDA to enter into interlocal agreement with Provo City, Utah County, the Provo School District, and Central Utah Water Conservancy District, authorizing the use of tax increment financing.
So these items are really all about the mill race project, and as you know, when we went through and presented the owner participation agreement and several other things, this was always a component that was going to be discussed later on. So we have approved the owner participation agreement. Mr. Earl has worked with our legal team to help beef up some of the language about the home ownership provisions. And so now we're bringing forth the interlocal agreements Mr. Earl has presented to you as a council and to the school board and to the city, to the Utah County Board of Commissioners. And so this is the next step in the process for us to begin authorizing the tax increment financing portion for this to be able to pay for some of the parking that's going to be associated with this project. So it's a fairly succinct, but that's pretty much the nutshell. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Did we do the project area about a year ago? Has it been about a year?
So the project area has been in place for a while. We're just activating this portion of it.
So if it's been in place for a while, how much time do we have left on it?
I believe this one has, I want to say, 8 years.
8 years. And the developers recognizes that and they're comfortable with that.
Can you remind me, am I misremembering, or are there kind of public aspects that we're kind of getting out of our...
So we're getting some public parking.
Public parking.
We're getting, the revitalization of the entire block. We're also getting, he's going to be picking up some of the maintenance and of the pedestrian bridge. Thank you. Brain freeze for a moment. But the pedestrian bridge is going to cross both the tracks and 600 west, 600 south.
I thought I heard discussion that it's not just the maintenance, but it's actually contributing, this project is also contributing just to the construction of that bridge, has that changed or?
Yeah.
I don't think it's changed.
Yeah, so the bridge originally would only go over the tracks, it wouldn't necessarily go over the road, so I thought they were contributing the building, across the road to the building.
And then kind of for these things that they're doing, and then it kind of is being offset, at least somewhat by tax increment financing. What kind of, do we have it spelled out? You say we're getting some public parking. Do we know, is that a number of stalls? Is that
I believe it's 20 stalls.
20 stalls? Is that certain hours of the day? Is it
It's definitely on, on the weekends, on the evenings. It's also on the off time so that when they're not being fully used by the office space, we have those 20 stalls available.
And then the last question I have is we've got 4 entities that we're entering into this agreement with, speaking from the perspective of the RDA board. What is their participation rate on this project?
The school board is 70%, the county is about 50%. We are in at 95%, and we've had some preliminary conversations with the water district at about 75%.
But those are not, you say preliminary discussions, those are.
Yeah, they haven't been finalized.
Okay. Then what are we?
The resolution puts in a cap and a time cap and an amount cap, and then authorizes the mayor in their capacity as chief executive officer to sign the agreements.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, we got through that quickly, appreciate that. All right, so item 10 will also be presented by Mr. Walter, and it is a resolution designating a survey area, authorizing the preparation of a draft community reinvestment project area plan and budget, and authorizing and directing all necessary action by redevelopment agency, staff, and legal counsel.
So we have been approached by representatives of Qualtrics to explore the possibility of creating a new project area out in the River Woods Business Park. The resolution, as it currently stands, is it's a much larger area than just the Qualtrics campus, on the notion that it's easier to subtract as we go through the process than it would be to add if we went by later on. So they are going to expand their existing campus. They're going to add 150,000 square feet of office space and employ up to over 100,000 people over the next 10 years. They have reached an agreement with the state of Utah. They'll be giving some incentives to them worth approximately $38 million. And they've reached out to us about the possibility of what can the city do to help get this project moving. So currently, I believe this is the campus they're talking about right here. So they're going to add the 150,000 square feet, which will roughly mirror this, and then add 2 structured parking space, decks to the project. They also own this piece right here, which is currently vacant. They will improve that for temporary parking, and then after the parking is constructed, after all their construction is done, they're willing to give up to half of that piece, which would be about 2 acres, for other users in the business park for parking purposes.
Can you help me understand what give up means? Is that like?
Make of it. I don't know if they're planning to transfer it or if they're just not going to lease. So we've had very preliminary conversations with Qualtrics and the representatives. I'm sure the exact mechanism hasn't been thought of yet as to whether we're going to.
It's not asphalt, is it?
It will be.
It will be. Currently, it's vacant dirt, but they will improve it and put the
Use
asphalt.
it as temporary parking while they build a new building.
Right. So they will put asphalt on it. Yeah.
Question, Dave.
Yes, sir.
So how many actual jobs would this create at this facility?
It'd be the 100,
Currently, yeah.
1,000.
Yeah, currently they have about 385 jobs at the facility. When they made their application to the state for the EdTIF funding, which they got from the state, they indicated they would have 2,245 jobs at the end of 10 years. So it's about an 8 times increase in jobs. Average wage for those jobs is $87,000 a year. So there are all, well, not all, but on average, they'd be household sustaining jobs, which has been our target all along.
It's just a question on those numbers. They've got 155,000 square feet now. They want to go,
That's the
they only
same,
employ 385.
that's the same question. They are,
They're gonna
they
have
are,
140 and they're going to
They're-
8 times employees?
they're very spread out in the building. As you know, they bought the Marinda building, which had many more employees in it than 385. So they have space to add additional employees in the existing building. That was the answer we got from them. I asked the very same question. It's like 7 square feet per employee. That doesn't quite work. And they indicated that they are dramatically under-occupying the existing building. So in combination with the increased square footage and densifying the current building, they can get to the 2,200 employees at the end of 10 years.
So as I mentioned earlier, if you were to look at the exhibit to the resolution, you'll see that the survey area is proposed to be pretty much the entire Riverwoods area. The thinking behind that is, as I said, is that as we go through the process and prepare the plan, we will naturally scale that back. So heretofore, what we have done when we've brought these projects to you is that the survey area and the proposed project area have been pretty much identical. That's the case for the golf course project area. It's the case for the mix. IFA, or I'm sorry, the mill race project here is part of a much larger area, but we're only activating the block that they're on. We're not anticipating additional funds coming in to make up any difference. So in thinking that it's easier to take land away during the survey process rather than add land to it if we find out that, we needed it later, we just went ahead and made it fairly broad to begin with. And as we go through this process, we will kind of whittle it away.
I'm a little concerned about the whittle away. It seems like if the fear is corrections on surveys to increase, I mean, you could do, it's like we're almost 5 times the property of what the survey would be, aren't we? 5 or 6 times probably. So you're telling me that once that survey is done, and that the boundary will be identified, that all of the other will go away?
Yes, so when we identify the boundary, the final boundary for the project proposed.
For this one project that Qualtrics is talking about.
Correct. We'll survey the larger area to determine what could be at some point in the future made available for tax increment financing, but in any case, you always establish a smaller project area. So the survey area would be larger, but you would come in and do a piece of it as a project area. That could mean later on, if someone approached us, we already have the survey, we call it a survey. It's really defining the characteristics of that area. And that could be then available at some future time without having to go through another surveying process. And I want to make survey meaning we're figuring out meets and bounds, but we're doing a survey of the characteristics of the property in general. We can always shrink that back. Historically, we've tried to look at larger areas, so we open opportunities later on down the road to be responsive to requests or potential redevelopment opportunities.
Okay, so what I understand you just said is we're going to survey this larger because we want to encourage more opportunities for more tax increment financing in this general area.
That's a possibility. I think again, our strategy for a long time has been to keep as many options open as possible. And this would give us the opportunity to do other things in the Riverwoods Business Park, should opportunities develop. Again, that's just been a strategy. That doesn't mean it's still the right strategy.
And you would have to come back to the council with a specific project.
In every case, we'd have to come back and establish a project area. That's correct. This is just the first broader step in the process. Yeah, we have not, we're really not prepared at this time to talk about what the deal would look like. That's still kind of yet to be developed. exactly what the boundary would be. For example, they could come in and say, well, maybe while we're at it, we'd like to take that little 4-acre spot where we're going to do temporary parking. The problem is, again, once you create a project area, the clock starts ticking, and so they'd really have to have something comparatively imminent to do that. But that could be an outcome of this process. So again, we'll just kind of have to wait and see how the data comes out of the survey process.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around some of the terminology, just so I'm clear on it. So, for example, mill race, we have, what is the area that is currently in place there now? Is that a project area?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a project area, and then we're going to activate a project within the project area. And then what we're proposing now,
What we're proposing is we take a broad view of what could be a project area in the future.
okay. And I think I heard you earlier state that, it's a lot easier to shrink an area, like as you do an initial survey of this area, it would be
Right.
easier to say, well, we're not going to include this.
Right.
It's a lot harder. I
It's-
imagine you'd have to come back and get
Yeah,
start over.
We'd have to kind of
start over
over.
to try to grow it.
Right.
So maybe we can call that the proposed project area, and then whatever we actually implement becomes the project area, and then within that project area, we can activate projects within the project area. Is that correct?
Apologies. So, I mean, there are, kind of vacant spots here and there. Is it a possibility that we could want at some point in the future to use tax increment to help encourage some development in this business park? Maybe. And I think by taking the broad stroke here at the beginning, we kind of preserve our options on the back end. So that when we come in, we'll probably end up saying, well, we're probably really not going to do the retail portion down here. That'll probably come out. Maybe some of the other developed business park comes out. At this point, I don't know. But in taking this first step, I felt it was a little more appropriate to take the broad scope. And that way we would have, as we concentrate down, we can then eliminate some of the property within the project area. Within the proposed, within the proposed reinvestment area.
So now that I think I've got the terminology a little bit better, and within the scope of what we're talking about specifically on this, just as a single council member, let me just kind of throw out what I'm thinking. I support doing a larger survey. Let's take a look at kind of the whole area and try to figure out what makes sense. When you come back from the study, I don't know, we'll have 4 new members of the council at that point, but I don't know where everyone will be, but where I will be at is I'm going to be wary of creating, in my opinion, overly large project area, because yes, it preserves options, and we could always restudy or whatever, so in the future, but not only does it preserve options, but I also think it communicates out to the business community to say, this is an area we have designated for reinvestment. To me, this is an area we want to redevelop. We feel like perhaps it's blighted in some way. Maybe I'm going too far, but this is an area that we're willing to participate in. So I want to be careful not to communicate something that we may not be. I just want to be careful what we're communicating.
And so we're
trying to direct people. Hey, please come here, we want you to reinvest here, and we'll participate by giving you public money to do so.
So there's kind of a balancing act that's going to happen through this process, is that, we do have partnerships with other taxing entities, the main, which is the school board, and they have a hard cap within their policies, and so we are going to, be as cognizant of that as possible and work with them to to make sure that we're not adding stuff that's going to be above and beyond the cap that they couldn't then participate in. So, as we go through this process, it'll naturally shrink in.
One of the things that excites me about this is the fact that we are losing companies like this up north. They're good, and this will give us an opportunity to say, yeah, we do value that in our community. And so I I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk with companies, basically, about this.
So if I'm not mistaken, they currently have co-headquarters here in Provo and in Seattle. They are doing, I want to say, a $300 million tower in Seattle at this point, and they are also looking to expand here. So I think this is an opportunity for us to encourage them to employ more people here locally and to increase the number of full-time employees that would be within this general area, which would, help the business base down here and with the retail portion, as well as helps maybe stabilize some of the other neighborhoods within the community.
I'm going to ask Dixon's favorite question then. What if we didn't do this? Would this happen, but if not?
As well, and let me just try to answer, and Dixon, feel free to weigh in. So as we had a couple of conversations with Qualtrics, as you probably know, they recently sold to a German company, SAP, which is one of the largest tech companies in the world, and the $300 million investment they made in Seattle was something that was authorized by the SAP board. Now that they're coming in and saying we want to grow the base in Provo, there's some questions about, well, why did we invest so much money in Seattle? And so the feedback we got from them was everything we can do to show state, local support for this expansion makes a difference to them. And the $37.8 million EdTIF project the state approved last week for their expansion was a big message, but the state also asks us in this process, what are the locals doing as well? And so what we've kind of said is, look, really the only tool we have available to us for an office project like this is to do infrastructure. Well, I guess there's two. There's infrastructure and there's tax incentive. Infrastructure's largely in place other than the parking. And what we've kind of said is what we typically do with parking is we do some kind of tax increment deal to allow the expansion to structure parking rather than have it on the surface level. And so that's what we've communicated to them, is that we're going to look at this, and the first step will be creating this survey area. We'll obviously come back and have many more discussions with them and with the council in the process. But so I guess Gary, it's a long way of saying I'm not exactly sure, but I do know if there's a signal sent that we're not interested in participating, I don't know what the repercussions of that might be. Does that make sense?
Yes, and
it's hard for me to say in this case that there's really a but for, because I'm not sure there is. But I do know it's a signal that they've asked us about our interest in trying to do something like this. Now that being said, and George, before you do, for 600 jobs at Duncan, which didn't quite get at this level, the state gave an EdTIF, which was far less than the $38 million they're proposing to give, again, because the employment base is larger. But we put well in excess of $10 million, probably $15 million in infrastructure for Duncan. And so from the standpoint of being able to get a substantial amount of bang for our buck, this is likely to be substantially less than that.
Wayne, you said exactly what I wanted to say. Compared to what we've done in the past, what they're asking for versus what they're giving in job creation at the prices that they're going to be paying for those salaries they're going to be paying, this is a fantastic deal. I can't even imagine us even.
And it's and again, part of what we love about Qualtrics, it's a homegrown business. It came out of BYU, started in the Smith's garage and in basement, and has has become now a multi-billion-dollar company. And again, we love the idea of trying to retain their corporate headquarters in Provo as opposed to having them jump somewhere else. And the state obviously feels similarly and made their announcement last week. And so we're again, we haven't yet defined exactly what that contribution is. We don't know all of the details of that yet. We'll continue to work through that. And we may be talking, in fact, I'm sure we'll be talking to the incoming council about their sense and attitude about tax increment financing and other kinds of incentives that we might offer for job creation specifically.
So in a city that has 28% poverty,
which is the highest in the county. If the jobs don't happen here, those people aren't all going to live in Provo, there's no way. But if they happen in Lehigh, there's probably a lower chance that those people live in Provo. So again, this is about preserving the base, providing an opportunity, and if you think it will happen without our participation, that's the dice we can roll. But again, I don't know, and frankly, I wish that the corporate requests were zero across the board. But when everybody else quits doing it, we can quit doing it too. I just don't know who's going to go first. And that's always the risk, and I hate it. But this is part of how corporate America works, and if we want to stand up and say, we're putting our foot down and by golly, we're just not going to do it, we can do that. That's not illegal, it's not immoral, but it's a conscious decision. It's a policy decision, right? Anyway, so this is my answer, Gary, your question.
No, and I appreciate that, and I agree with you 100%. I think this is an opportunity. I just feel like I needed to ask the question.
Yeah, great question. You should.
I just wanted to express my support for it. I think it's a great company, and I think they're a real asset to our community. So I'm very supportive. I'm curious about, I mean, this is sort of a related issue, but I'm curious about transportation access to that. If we're going to grow this and there's going to be a bigger business community there, it's not on the UVX line. It's really kind of in an awkward location in terms of the quadrants of the city. And so I'm just wondering what lies in the future in terms of helping. I mean, I would like to see as many of those people living in Provo as possible, and it seems to me that one of the reasons why they might want to is that there's a sort of easy way to get there. Because if they're commuting from someplace else, it's actually kind of an onerous commute, right? You've got to come all the way across 800 North in Orem, which just seems to me to be, you know, an inner circle of hell of some kind. If you had to do it every single day.
He's right there for sure.
Yeah, and even University Avenue, which is a beautiful street, but it's getting pretty nightmarish there, especially right at the mouth of the canyon. At certain times of the day, that line gets longer and longer. So what do we know about plans for public transportation? Is there a way to get a UVX line out there? What's the thinking?
At this point, I don't think we've had any conversations about that, so.
I'd love to see one out there. We've done it at the one end of the town with the mall, and I'd love to get the support there for the Riverwoods, somehow getting a UVX that'll circle their campus like we do the mall. I think it'll be, and I think we get a lot more connectivity to our regular UVX.
You know, it's interesting, even though UVX goes down to the Timpanogos Technology Park, the former Novell campus, the owners of that facility have purchased 2 large panel vans to shuttle specifically to the Front Runner station, and they run that constantly. And they're purple, you've probably seen them. They're Mercedes vans, they hold probably 15 people. And those run pretty frequently. That's in addition to what UVX, even though there's a stop at the north end and the south end of the campus. If any of you have been to the Google campus in California, they also have vans that basically bus them in. And with that many people, I mean, creativity is going to have to be a part. Provo has just not been blessed with great geography, even if we had all the transit based on a mouth of a canyon.
We are blessed with great geography.
But it causes some challenges for getting around. You know, at the mouth of the canyon, between the mountains and the lake.
I think we're going to lose a lot of people to Heber, actually. If we don't come up with some creative solutions, because that's actually I mean, if you're willing to drive up that canyon in the winter, it's a very quick commute if you're right there at the mouth of the canyon. It's like 20 minutes to get to the
It'll take definitely some innovation, some creativity to keep the traffic issues manageable and desirable.
So I know this council as constituted, you know, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I do want to go on the public record with just some thoughts on this. When I heard that Qualtrics is thinking to expand. I'm ecstatic that they're willing to do that. I'm thrilled. What a great homegrown story. Great company, great asset to the community, as Mr. Hammond said. That's great. I do worry, though, and it is what corporate America is now. It is kind of the way that things are done. But I would like, there's a certain amount that we may have to go along with, but if we can kind of express some of the, to me, sorry, I'm not explaining this very well, but the right way to show companies that we value them, that's, giving them the keys to the city, or naming a day after them, or naming a street after them, or, give them a parade. But we just went through an election where nearly 2 out of every 3 Provo voters voted against a school bond that would have addressed some very needed infrastructure problems with our schools. And I believe at least one major reason for that was just concern about the ever-increasing tax rates that's hitting them. And so I think at least a part of this conversation needs to be, we're looking at property taxes that would be gathered, and then redirecting them from, the police services, from our schools, from these things, and redirecting them back to the companies. And I understand the whole idea with tax increment, where we're only giving away the increment, and if it wasn't going to happen otherwise, then that's money that wouldn't be there. So are we really redirecting? I understand all of that, and argue both sides of that. But we're expanding, we're bringing new families in, new employees with their families. They're going to need roads to drive on. They're going to need police service. They're going to need schools to educate their kids. And so there's going to be an increment in our services that need to be provided. But we're taking the increment on at least the property taxes for this and not applying it to those incremental services. So just particularly at this time, I think we need to be very cognizant of how we're using our citizens' tax money. I think they're very concerned about it. We need to be concerned as well and make sure that we're striking a fair balance. I look at Riverwoods, and right now that business park seems to be doing as well as it's ever been doing. And so, is now the time to be putting money back in for redevelopment.
But Dave, is it an investment for the future? Because this increment only lasts for a certain period, and then after that, then we get that increment back. So those are balances. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and I think this would, everything I just said would be a lot easier to say if it wasn't Qualtrics, if it wasn't for this amount of time. I mean, in some ways, this is it'd be stupid not to do this, in some ways, but in other ways, there's, I think we need to be careful and strike the balance.
I think you need to understand a little bit about Qualtrics. The CEO's stepfather was the mayor of Provo. So anyway, you're going to deal with, Mike Hill was the mayor before I took office. Anyone you're going to have to deal with Qualtrics is going to be better to deal with than anyone you've ever had to deal with. They're going to be fair, they love the community, they want to stay here. I have no concerns personally about working with them because they go deep into the community.
So you're investing.
They donated to elections in the community, not to mine, to my opponents. Which is fine. I love people that are involved. If you watch Qualtrics on the Jazz Network, the 5 for 5, instead of taking their Jazz uniform to put their Qualtrics name on, they have 5 for 5, which is a cancer racing.
They did that campaign.
That's Qualtrics.
Yeah, it is.
And when the CEO holds his hand up and says, Mike, that's his stepfather that died of cancer recently. So just be confident that they're going to be the best people you deal with. That's the kind of people they are.
Right. So, giving up taxes, and like you say, we're going to have increased expenses if those people live in Provo.
But on the other hand, property tax is not our only source of income. Sales tax is.
And these are high-paying jobs. So I think that's an offsetting factor. We have businesses, whether it be grocery stores or others, who look at Provo and say, well, how much money are in those pockets? Should we bother to locate there?
I think it's a little inaccurate to describe the vote on the school bond as a vote against. I mean, a lot of people in Provo, they're concerned about taxes, but they're really concerned that we're not investing in the business community, we're not bringing jobs to Provo, we're not helping. I mean, and there were people who ran on that kind of a campaign too. So I mean, I think there's probably more sentiment in the city, or at least certainly as much sentiment in the city in favor of a kind of investment in our economic well-being as there is about concern about price tags. Because I mean, again, that's a cost-benefit and analysis that may. I mean, I'm sure it doesn't satisfy everybody, and I'm not saying tax income and financing is the golden ticket every time, and you know, I've always appreciated your caution on it. But I think I agree with Mr. Stewart that this is kind of a very special case, and it's a very special opportunity because of the kind of sustainability economically that it brings to bring that many really well-paying jobs to a community. I mean, that's why I raised the issue of transportation. I think we have to do everything we can to keep people like that incentivize and provide opportunities for people like that to want to stay here. I mean, that housing report we read, you know, talked about people are living in Provo and commuting to Lehigh. You know, it is the blessing of our geography, right? I mean, there are some really wonderful things about our community that we all know and love, but I think making sure that we not only bring jobs here, but then provide the opportunity for people who want to live here, I think is really we're going to see a lot of long-term benefit. I like to look at things in terms of return on investment, and it seems to me that the long-term return on investment for this would be very high.
Okay, since you brought that up, could you just help me understand what the return on investment is? We're giving away property tax for 12 years. So where in the next 12 years are we going to get?
Well, I think it comes in several forms. First of all, even over the short term, we get a portion of that property tax that we're not currently getting now, right? We're not getting 100%.
Well, we don't know yet. I think that's the bottom one. We're not sure yet what that number
Our
was.
past practice has been 5%.
Okay, so we get a small sliver of that, and then after the 12 years, of course, we get, compared to today, a huge increase. And then as Councilor Connect mentioned, there's sales tax revenue, which is bringing a lot of high-paying jobs. Some of them are going to spend a lot of money in Provo.
Okay, and where do you think we're going to spend it? Riverwoods maybe?
Some of it, yeah.
Do we know what the sales tax we get from Riverwoods annually is?
Yes, I believe that's the data.
What our portion is?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we say these things, I just really like some numbers to say, this is how much sales tax Riverwoods made last year, brought to Provo. The public does this, and they double their sales for Riverwoods. What would it, how many dollars would that be, or how much would that be? I just have a hard time, the tax increment where, when I first got on the council, it was new to me and I had to learn a little bit about it, and it seemed like we applied it to areas that needed redevelopment. They were blighted, we did it downtown, we're trying to pick downtown up, we're trying to, now here we are, I mean, I think Riverwoods shopping area, not the shopping area, the business park is very successful. There's no place to park out there anyway. And Qualtrics and George, I understand they're a homegrown company. Mike Hill is one of my best friends, all through junior high and high school. Scott and not Nancy, Mike and Nancy. Scott and his wife, they were, that little street we live on, that's where it all started, right there in that house. So I know them well. I have nothing, Qualtrics is a great company. It's a great success story. Probably one of the greatest success stories in the state of Utah. I just don't understand. I'm a little bit, how do we take tax money that could be used for so many other things to give to a company that's so successful? And if the reason is, if we don't do it, they will go to Seattle.
Or Lehigh.
Well, if I understand right, Dave, isn't Lehigh, haven't they quit their tax increment? Didn't you tell us that a while back?
That's what they've been telling us at the City Managers Association meetings, but the reason is because they've achieved that economy where people are coming to them, right? But where are they coming from? They're coming from places like Provo and Salt Lake City and Seattle, or because there's a growing nexus there that they're attracted to. That's the challenge. So, but the flip side of your argument, and I hear your argument, I agree with your argument, but I also agree with the argument, what happens if those 1,500 jobs that are here leave? Ancestry was empty for how many years? Those are the challenges we have. How do we keep that area vibrant is a question I think the council has to wrestle with. So for the last 12-month period that we have the data for, the Riverwoods did approximately 19 million in sales.
And what was Provo City sales tax portion?
1% of
It would, yeah, well, I think this, yeah, 189,000. Would be the 1%.
So it takes some time to do some math, but I'd like to just kind of compare what these. I don't think they're going to shop in our grocery stores because they're going to go right over to Harmon's, right on 8th North, and they're going to shop. They're not going to drive up to Wrigley's. What's the one on Canyon Road? Days Market. Excuse me. So I can hear it sounds good, but I just don't see the numbers.
Well, on that note too, I think there's some benefits that are hard to measure with this, and I understand that it would be great if we could measure everything, but the benefit of sort of raising our average income in Provo with that many high-paying jobs, I think there's some spin-off effects from that, some like grocery stores or other businesses that might come because of that might not otherwise. And then there's also a spin-off effect with just having a really big employer like that come to Provo might draw others in the future. Wasn't the average income one of the major data points that caused us to lose Trader Joe's, places like that? Wasn't that one of the things we were looking at? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. We don't have the data either to say exactly what this does to the average income. But I think there's that's not something we should ignore. Anyway.
So for me, a lot of that question, it gets back to, if, all of that's true, if, they were to leave, or if they don't expand, if we don't participate. And it's not just that, it's because it's based on this baseline, it doesn't change. And so, if it did take, 7 years or something to backfill Ancestry, but if we're completely full, then we don't have space for new startups to grow into or whatever. So it's hard to say what would happen if we don't do that. But the question before us tonight, and I appreciate this broader discussion that we just had. I think that's important. The question before us tonight is: do we authorize staff to go through and study this area? That's the most immediate question that we have.
Is it study or create?
It's a survey area. So
So are we
we
gonna
are
create?
creating a survey area and authorizing us to take the next steps through the
But
process.
we won't be actually creating the project
We
area
will not be
tonight. We're
creating a
just
project area tonight.
Asking you to study an area to propose a project area. Yeah.
First step in the long process.
Yeah, okay, so with that, is there any last thoughts before? Thank you, Mr. Walter. We have one more item. We are 20 minutes past. Are we okay going another 11 minutes, another 5 minutes? How much time are we willing to, how late can we get out here? I
I know
say,
there's no closed meeting,
there's no closed meeting.
so it's
So
all
let's
about
go.
how long you need to eat dinner.
Okay, so 5 o'clock, we'll be done at 5 o'clock. Is that, any objections to that?
Go Brian.
Okay, Ryan, you've got 10 minutes.
Let's see what we can do. What we have here is the moderate income housing plan. The state mandates that every town and city have a moderate income housing plan. We have one that was adopted, and our most recent one was 2016. This last year, the state legislature added requirements to those plans. What this plan before you tonight attempts to do is update the plan we have. If you look at the plan, 95 whatever percent of it's just numbers, stats, and here's what things are. I think you've seen those in other aspects. We've had a recent housing needs assessment that was, the draft anyways, done in October, along with a housing market analysis, which was done in October for our larger consortium membership. There are things we've tried to glean out of that, but really what this comes down to are the goals and strategies to meet the affordable housing needs that are at the end of the document. Those list the current general plan goals listed out that you have in the general plan now. They then list 6 goals that we can attain in 3 categories. Goals related to strategically meeting current and forecasted affordable housing needs, which lists 2 goals. Goals to identify appropriate locations for new affordable housing units, which lists 2 goals. And then goals to eliminate barriers to the development of affordable housing, which lists additional 2 goals. The third element was meeting state goals, and the state came up with 23 goals that cities of our size have to meet 3 of those. We're required to meet 3. We meet, I think, 22. And so I don't think there's any question that we're addressing. There's not to say there's not more we can do, but I think it's a report of what we're trying to do. Now, going to the Planning Commission, there was some confusion on their end of thinking it's the report versus the plan. Some of them didn't understand the state law had changed since they last had worked on one. And the reports are biennial, and actually they'll change to annual next year. But ours is current. We had that in last year. You did a resolution to adopt that. This plan is the one to meet the state requirements, and principally it's those 6 goals listed out is the only new element to it. Now, the Planning Commission did express concerns through their discussion with number 4, which is complete the development of neighborhood plans to more closely identify the proper location for needed housing types and complementary land uses. In their discussion, a couple of the commissioners felt that the neighborhood plans are too NIMBYistic, meaning they try to protect their neighborhood at the expense of the city, and they feel that some of these decisions need to be made on a citywide basis. So in their motion, and again, not understanding the updated requirements, they made a recommendation to send forward the affordable housing plan, and they said that the existing one, plus the report of these goals and other elements at the back. But then the part they wanted to continue was a further discussion of the moderate income housing and housing in general. And that fits in with where we were a year or more ago. When did we readopt our goals and policies?
About a year ago.
About a year ago, where they expressed concern, where they wanted to dig into it and everything else. And I don't think anybody disagrees with that. I think, we need to do that. We need to get in and really get into the meat of some of these items. We proposed a few of those through this plan. I think this plan points out the real effect BYU students have on this city. It's basically somewhere around 38%, not just the BYU students, but UVU students, other students that live here. And, that's a reoccurring glob of population. They don't get younger, they don't get older, it's just kind of there.
But we have 25 to 28% poverty because it includes households that are BYU students and student populations, which don't make a lot of money. And I think there's a real need that we need to vary those out to concentrate on where the real issues are. Now, we know the real issues in Provo are the same as in other places, our poverty level. The others are certainly there, but the market seems to be reacting to those and trying to address those. To that poverty level, the ones 30% below, and certainly 30 to 50% of medians also get in that category. But I think, you've talked about strategies before, and I think those are the things we want to continue talking about. You have the Affordable Housing Committee looking into those, and those are the things we need to get to. But the goal tonight is to have you adopt this updated plan that we can then get to the state for the December 1st deadline, which they have. So we can then meet that, which then allows us to participate in other housing funds as well as meet some of the newer allocations which come from road UDOT projects and other things. So it gives us a broader tie into what's available.
I just had a couple of quick comments. I'm very supportive of voting in favor tonight. I thought this report was extremely useful and interesting and informative. And longer term, I do think a lot of what the report says about minorities in the city and some of the particular housing struggles they have was very, very telling and very concerning to me. And I think we need to figure that out. With regard to the neighborhood plan criticisms, I mean, I can sort of philosophically understand the resistance to the idea of giving too much autonomy to a neighborhood to come up with their own plan that could conceivably run afoul of what the city's plans are, and it may tie our hands in certain ways that we don't want. But that hasn't been my impression of what I've seen from the neighborhood plans that have come forward. I mean, I'm thinking of the one that was developed a while back with Jamin Rowan's class at BYU that Bill Pepperoni was directly involved in. And when it's done right, it seems to have actually the opposite effect. It seems to me that it encourages a neighborhood to have some buy-in to the city goals and to help the city find some ways to meet those goals. And I mean, maybe I was just kind of scratching my head about that criticism because I had almost the exactly opposite impression, that it was actually helpful to sort of overcome NIMBYism. What's your take on that? I mean, I don't feel like I've seen enough neighborhood plans to maybe have the confidence that I feel like I want to have in it, and so I'm open to.
Yeah, I guess my take is you adopt those plans. You can tell if there's NIMBYism.
You can say no because it looks too.
Right, say, wait, you've just kicked out all this housing. I think they've tried to be very balanced so far. I think, we had that Southeast plan really looked at, okay, where can we put this type of housing that doesn't directly or negatively impact maybe the rest of the neighborhood, in fact, benefits the rest of the neighborhood. So my feeling is so far, I think we've actually had good feedback out of those. Plus, those are adopted and looked at as they come through. That if that's an issue, that can be brought out at that time.
Okay.
We might learn from what the state is doing. I think the state has some overall goals. The state is pushing. I think the state feels it a little bit more from their level than perhaps all the various cities around. And they've been trying to get the cities to do their part. And I think, Provo, obviously at 22 out of the 23 items, but we were already doing more than our part. It would really be helpful if everyone else started going their own way. But how did the state approach this? They said, okay, well, here's a menu of 23 items. You need to, at least at the start, you need to pick 3 of these. So everyone has to be doing at least something. When we go forward with these neighborhood plans, what if we also say, this is our expectation. Our expectation is that you will address in your own way, in a way that's contextually sensitive and makes sense for your neighborhood and the characteristics of your neighborhood. But what is your neighborhood going to do to participate in making sure that we have housing that's affordable and allow the neighborhoods, and for some neighborhoods, that's maybe, hey, we'd like to have the A overlay. We'd like to participate in housing. Another neighborhood, they may not want the A overlay, they may want something else, but they could be determining for themselves how they want to participate and be part of the solution.
I believe the planning commission can be part of that too, if we indeed let them get into some of the meat of this and do some proposals, look in depth at it, they can bring forward some better ideas and better, things that way too, so.
Okay, by that clock, we've got 30 seconds left. Yeah, Mr.
So
Stewart.
noted that there's 2 members of the planning commission that have a feeling about something, I'm gonna go for it in spite of that. That doesn't concern me at all.
Okay, any other comments? All right, well, let's adjourn 30 seconds early.
And council members, the lunch is available in the, I guess.
Unless there's any objection.